Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the fanfiction guy. Back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Wielded Divine Axe? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The sun hung high over Dagobah Beach, its golden rays cutting through the morning haze and casting long shadows over heaps of rusted junk and discarded refuse. The once pristine shoreline, now a graveyard of forgotten relics, shimmered under the relentless light. Izuku Midoriya stood amidst the wreckage, his newly towering frame of 6 feet 1 inch cutting an imposing silhouette against the backdrop of scattered debris. His emerald eyes, sharp with determination, surveyed the chaotic landscape. The air carried the tang of salt and decay, but to Izuku, it smelled of opportunity, a chance to forge something new from the ruins of his past. Months had passed since that fateful day when the world seemed to collapse around him. The sting of Allmight's blunt rejection, the venomous words of his former friend Katsuki Bakugo, and the disdainful glares of so-called heroes still lingered in his mind, but they no longer weighed him down. Instead, they fueled a fire within his chest, a searing heat that had awakened something primal, something unyielding. Izuku was quirkless, part of the 20% of humanity deemed powerless in a world dominated by quirks. Yet, as he stood under the blazing sun, he felt anything but weak. A strange, almost divine strength coursed through his veins, as if the sunlight itself was weaving power into his very being. He bent down, wrapping his calloused hands around a rusted refrigerator door half buried in the sand. With a grunt, he hoisted it free, muscles straining but steady, and tossed it onto a growing pile of cleared debris. The beach cleanup had become his training ground, a testament to his resolve. He wasn't just moving junk, he was sculpting himself into something greater, proving to the world and to himself that quirk or no quirk, he could rise above. The locals had started to notice the slow transformation of the beach, whispering about the tall, quiet boy who worked tirelessly under the sun. To them, he was an anomaly, a quirkless nobody defying expectations. To Izuku, he was simply taking the first steps toward his destiny. The sun climbed higher, its warmth intensifying. Izuku paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and tilted his face toward the sky. The light bathed him, and for a moment he felt invincible. Words, unbidden, rose to his lips, resonating with a confidence he barely recognized. He wondered who decided that he was unworthy. Under the sun's gaze, all are equal. His voice, steady and commanding, carried over the crash of waves. He didn't know where the words came from, but they felt right, as if spoken by someone or something greater than himself. At Aldra Junior High, the atmosphere had shifted since Izuku's transformation. The hallways, once a gauntlet of jeers and taunts, now fell silent as he passed. His classmates, who had once mocked his quirkless status, averted their eyes, unnerved by the calm intensity in his gaze. His teachers, too, seemed at a loss, their lectures faltering when Izuku's hand rose to answer a question with a precision that left them scrambling. He wasn't just taller now, he carried himself with a quiet authority, a presence that demanded respect without ever raising his voice. Katsuki Bakugo, however, was not so easily cowed. The explosive blonde had always thrived on dominance, his powerful quirk fueling his arrogance. To see Izuku, the quirkless nobody tower over him with a body honed by months of relentless training, was an insult he couldn't stomach. During a break between classes, Bakugo cornered Izuku in the courtyard, his palms sparking with miniature explosions. He snarled, demanding to know what had changed. Izuku turned slowly, his expression unreadable. The midday sun streamed through the school's open windows, bathing him in light. His eyes glinted, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous certainty. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over Bakugo, who instinctively took a step back. He expressed his distaste for being looked down upon by someone so small. The words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. Bakugo's mouth opened, but no retort came. For the first time, he saw something in Izuku's gaze that made his blood run cold, a beast, calm and collected, waiting to strike. The moment was broken by the bell, signaling the end of break. Izuku turned without another word, leaving Bakugo rooted to the spot, his fists trembling. The other students, who had gathered to watch the confrontation, dispersed quickly, whispering among themselves. Izuku's presence had become a force, a quiet storm that unsettled everyone around him. Back at Dagoba Beach, Izuku's training intensified. The piles of junk dwindled as his strength grew. He didn't just lift and carry, he strategized, analyzing the best ways to move heavy objects with minimal effort, using leverage and momentum to his advantage. His notebooks, once filled with hero analyses, now brimmed with workout regimens, nutritional plans, and tactical notes. He studied martial arts videos online, practicing katas under the moonlight when the beach was quiet. He sprinted along the shore, weaving through debris to hone his agility. Each day, he pushed his limits, driven by a pride that refused to be extinguished. His mother, Inko, watched his transformation with a mix of awe and worry. She had always supported his dreams, even when the world told him they were impossible. Now, seeing him return home with a body sculpted by hard work and a fire in his eyes she hadn't seen before, she couldn't help but feel proud. She remarked on how different he seemed, expressing her concern for his well-being. Izuku smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his hardened features. He reassured her that he was more than okay, that he was finding his own way. He didn't tell her about the strange dreams that haunted his night's visions of a figure wreathed in flames, wielding a massive axe, whispering of pride and power. Nor did he mention the heat that surged through him under the sun, as if the light itself was fueling his soul. Those were mysteries he wasn't ready to unravel, not yet. As the months passed, Dagoba Beach began to transform. The mountains of trash shrank, revealing stretches of clean sand and sparkling waves. The locals, initially skeptical, started to gather, offering words of encouragement or even lending a hand. Izuku didn't seek their praise, but he accepted it with a nod, his focus unwavering. He wasn't cleaning the beach for glory, he was proving a point to himself, to the heroes who dismissed him, to the world that labeled him weak. Afternoon, as the sun reached its zenith, Izuku stood atop a cleared section of the beach, a rusted car frame hoisted above his head. His muscles burned, but the heat in his chest blazed brighter. He hurled the frame onto a pile, the impact echoing like a thunderclap. The small crowd of onlookers gasped, murmuring among themselves. Izuku turned to face the sun, its light enveloping him, and spoke words that seemed to come from somewhere beyond himself. He expressed his unwavering pride, declaring that under the sun's radiance, he was unstoppable. The crowd fell silent, awestruck by the conviction in his voice. Even the seagulls overhead seemed to pause, as if the world itself was listening. Izuku didn't notice. He was already moving to the next pile of debris, his heart pounding with a rhythm that felt like destiny. At school, the dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Bakugo's taunts grew less frequent, replaced by a wary silence. The other students kept their distance, sensing the change in Izuku's demeanor. His teachers, once dismissive, began to call on him more often, impressed by his analytical mind and newfound confidence. However, Izuku didn't care for their approval. He was done seeking validation from a system that judged him for something he couldn't control. One day, as he walked home under the setting sun, he passed a group of kids playing hero in an alley. One of them, a small boy with no visible quirk, was being pushed around by the others. Izuku stopped, his shadow falling over the group. The bullies froze, their bravado evaporating under his gaze. He calmly instructed them to leave the boy alone, asserting that true strength lies in how one chooses to use it. The bullies scattered, and the small boy looked up at Izuku with wide, grateful eyes, asking if he was a hero. Izuku crouched down, meeting the boy's gaze, and with a faint smile, he replied that he was not yet a hero but was working on it. As he walked away, the sun dipped below the horizon, and the heat in his chest faded to a quiet ember. But Izuku knew it would return, just as the sun would rise again. He was quirkless, yes, but he was no longer powerless. With every step, every lift, every moment under the sun, he was forging himself into something new, a hero born not of quirks, but of pride, determination, and an unyielding will to prove the world wrong. And so, under the watchful gaze of the sun, Izuku Midoriya continued his journey, a flame of pride burning brighter with each passing day. The sun blazed over Dagoba Beach, its light glinting off the newly restored shoreline, where waves lapped gently against clean sand. 10 months of relentless effort had transformed the junk-strewn wasteland into a place of beauty, a testament to Izuku Midoriya's unwavering resolve. Standing at the water's edge, his 6 feet 1 inch frame rippled with hard-earned muscle, his emerald eyes reflecting the ocean's sparkle. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of salt and freedom. Izuku's chest swelled with quiet pride, not arrogance, but a deep, unshakable belief in his own worth. He had done this, quirkless and doubted, proving to himself that he could reshape the world one piece at a time. 2 months ago, the beach had gained another visitor, Mei Hatsum, a whirlwind of pink dreadlocks and boundless enthusiasm. She had arrived with a spark in her eyes, chattering about her inventions and her dream to revolutionize hero support gear. Izuku had been hauling a rusted engine block when she bounded up, unfazed by his towering presence, and declared him the perfect test subject for her creations. Her unapologetic pride in her work resonated with him, and soon, their days were filled with shared laughter and collaboration. Mei scavenged usable electronics from the beach's debris, tinkering with gadgets while Izuku trained, her inventions occasionally sparking or whirring in the background as he lifted and ran. The transformation wasn't just external. One morning, Izuku had woken to find a strange to-do etched across his back, a swirling design that pulsed faintly, like embers under his skin. His mother, Inko, had nearly fainted, fretting that he'd joined some delinquent gang. She had asked him if he was in trouble, her voice trembling. He knelt before her, his voice steady, assuring her that this was no gang mark, it was just him, trying to make her proud. She believed him, though her worry lingered. Izuku didn't tell her about the dreams, the figure wreathed in flames, an axe in hand, whispering of pride or the heat that surged through him under the sun's gaze. Those secrets were his to bear. Now, he stood before the gates of UA High, the premier hero academy in Japan. The towering structure loomed, its prestige lost on Izuku. He felt no awe, only a calm determination to prove himself. Other examinees whispered as he passed, their eyes lingering on his sculpted frame, clad in a sleeveless shirt and track pants that showcased his physique. Some shrank back, intimidated, others stared in curiosity. Izuku ignored them all, his focus unbroken until a soft gasp caught his attention. A girl with short brown hair stumbled, her foot catching on a crack in the pavement. Without thinking, Izuku's hand shot out, steadying her before she could fall. He remarked that it was a bad omen to fall on her face. The girl's cheeks flushed as she stammered a thank you and hurried off, leaving Izuku to wonder if he had said something wrong. Before he could dwell on it, a familiar weight landed on his chest. Mei, her arms wrapping around him in an enthusiastic hug. It was nice to see Mei, and he chuckled, suggesting they should get going. Mei grinned, clinging tighter, insisting she was comfortable. Laughing, Izuku hoisted her onto his shoulder with ease, her slight frame no burden to his strength. Together, they strode into UA, Mei chattering about her latest inventions while Izuku scanned the crowd, his expression unreadable. The written exam passed in a blur, Izuku's analytical mind making quick work of the questions. In the auditorium, present Mick's booming voice explained the practical exam: destroy robotic villains to earn points, with each examinee assigned to a battle center. Izuku was at Gate A, stretching in preparation, his muscles flexing under the sunlight streaming through the windows. The other examinees stole glances, some whispering about his physique, others unnerved by the calm intensity in his eyes. He paid them no mind, his gaze settling on the brown-haired girl from earlier. She fidgeted nervously, and Izuku considered offering a word of encouragement until a sharp voice interrupted. A tall boy with glasses, rigid with self-righteous authority, accused Izuku of trying to ruin the girl's chances by distracting her. Izuku turned slowly, narrowing his eyes. The glasses-wearing boy faltered under his gaze, sweat beading on his forehead as Izuku's height and presence loomed. He questioned the boy's authority, asserting that no one had the right to decide someone's fate when he barely knew them. Watch what you say about me or anyone else with your arrogance, weakling. The final word landed heavily, and the boy's legs wobbled, his face paling as if scorched by an unseen flame. Izuku turned away, leaving him to recover. Approaching the brown-haired girl, Izuku noticed her trembling. Before she could react, he gently grasped her waist, turning her to face him as she yelped in surprise. He observed that she was nervous, which was understandable. He encouraged her to take calming breaths to ease her fear. He set her down, patting her head with a faint smirk as she blushed, following his advice with slow, steady breaths. The gates to the battle center opened with a metallic groan, and Izuku didn't hesitate. He sprinted forward, leaving the others frozen in shock. Present Mick's voice echoed, urging everyone to follow him. The examinees scrambled after him, but Izuku was already in the mock city, his movements fluid and precise. The exam was almost laughably easy. The robotic villain's 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers crumbled under his fists, their metal frames no match for his raw strength. Izuku moved with purpose, his strikes calculated, never wasting energy. He muttered to himself about the disappointment of the challenge as he smashed a 3-pointer with a single punch. The sun blazed overhead, and with each passing minute he felt stronger, as if the light itself was fueling him. After racking up 69 points, he decided it was enough. Leaping onto a nearby rooftop, he surveyed the battlefield, ready to assist anyone in trouble. Inside UA's control room, the faculty watched the monitors with keen interest. Principal Nizu, his small form perched on a chair, sipped tea as he observed the exam. He mused about the quality of the examinees this year, his paw hovering over a large red button. With a press, the ground trembled, and a colossal 0-pointer robot emerged, its massive form dwarfing the mock city as it advanced, causing buildings to shake. Allmight, in his weakened form, stared at the monitor showing Izuku. The boy's strength, confidence, and sheer presence were unrecognizable from the tearful kid he'd left on that rooftop months ago. He wondered if Izuku had lied about being quirkless or if something else was at play. The thought of an unknown force chilled him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the screen. Izuku, now at 167 points, barely flinched as the 0-pointer loomed. He scoffed at the overwhelming challenge, shaking his head. Most examinees fled, but a desperate cry stopped him cold. A girl was pinned under rubble, her leg trapped. Izuku's veins pulsed, the heat in his chest flaring as he sprinted toward her, the sun amplifying his speed. He cleared the debris in seconds, lifting her bridal style and carrying her to safety. Setting her down, he turned to the 0-pointer, a small smile curving his lips. It was time to act. The girl Ochako Uraraka, as he'd later learn, watched in awe as Izuku charged the towering robot. The examinees below froze, and even the faculty leaned closer to their screens. Izuku's body thrummed with power, the heat within him surging to a crescendo. He crouched, the ground cracking beneath him, and launched himself skyward, a crater marking his takeoff. At the peak of his leap, he drew back his right fist, heat radiating from it as if it were forged in a furnace. With a laugh of pure exhilaration, he drove his fist into the 0-pointer's head, the impact sending sparks and shockwaves through the air. The robot staggered, its head caving in as explosions rippled across its frame. Izuku descended, the wind whipping around him until a sudden force halted his fall. He hovered, disoriented, until he realized Ochako had touched him, her quirk nullifying his gravity. She released him, and he landed lightly, turning to her with a raised brow, thanking her for the save and asking if she was all right. Ochako, pale and trembling, promptly lost her composure. Izuku blinked, unsure how to respond, but his attention shifted to his hand, still warm with that strange, fiery power. The exam ended, and Izuku walked out of the battle center, his expression stoic despite the whispers and fearful glances from other examinees. A cheerful voice called out to him. He turned to see Ochako jogging toward him, her face bright despite her earlier ordeal. She expressed her gratitude for his help and introduced herself, laughing awkwardly as she craned her neck to meet his gaze. Izuku chuckled, a rare warmth in his voice as he introduced himself. She blushed, mumbling about hoping they'd both pass before hurrying off. Izuku watched her go, a faint smile lingering until a familiar weight landed on his shoulders. May perched on him like a playful gremlin. He sighed, amused, and asked how she had done on the exam. May grinned, excitedly sharing her success and her ideas for his hero costume. Izuku raised a brow, teasing her about his own weapon idea. May playfully pouted, reminding him about their agreement regarding nicknames. Izuku's laughter echoed as they walked through Yue's gates, the sun setting behind them, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with pride. The night sky stretched endlessly above Dagobah Beach, stars twinkling like scattered diamonds against the velvet darkness. The moon hung low, its silver light casting a serene glow over the restored shoreline, where waves whispered softly against the sand. Izuku stood shirtless, his track pants clinging to his legs as the sea breeze brushed his skin. Days had passed since the UA entrance exam, and he'd returned to the beach that had become his sanctuary, a place where he'd forged himself anew. The sun's warmth no longer fueled him, but the moonlight seemed to stir something different, a quieter, more introspective heat that pulsed faintly in his chest. Izuku's routine had intensified. His mornings began with jogs along the shore, the rhythmic thud of his feet against the sand grounding him. One-handed push-ups, now reaching 1,000 in mere minutes, were a testament to his relentless drive. He'd switch hands mid-set, muscles flexing. Under the sun's gaze, each movement precise and powerful. The beach, once a dumping ground, now gleamed with pride, a mirror of his own transformation. Between workouts, he made time for May Hatsum, whose infectious energy and inventive genius had become a constant in his life. They'd tinker together, her salvaging circuits from forgotten appliances while he hauled debris, their banter a welcome reprieve from his solitary focus. He also helped his mother, Inko, at her small cafe, a cozy establishment that had blossomed into a local favorite. As a waiter, Izuku drew attention, his chiseled frame and quiet confidence turning heads, particularly among the female patrons. They lingered over their coffee, stealing glances at him in his crisp uniform, but he served with a polite detachment, his mind elsewhere on his training, his dreams, and the strange power simmering within him. After a grueling workout, Izuku checked the time on his phone, the screen glowing faintly in the dusk. He had enough time for a walk. Slipping on a sleeveless shirt and a pair of glasses, strange accessories that inexplicably tempered the fiery pride that surged under sunlight, he left the beach, the sand cool beneath his feet. At home, Izuku stood before his bedroom mirror, adjusting the glasses that rested on his nose. The lenses calmed him, dulling the heat that often threatened to consume his thoughts. He murmured to himself that he didn't know why, but these made him feel centered. He shed his shirt, revealing the lion tattoo etched across his back, its lines bold and intricate, pulsing faintly as if alive. The mark had appeared months ago, a mystery tied to the dreams of a flame-wreathed figure and a voice that spoke of pride. He traced the tattoo's edges, contemplating the power it represented and the identity of the voice that had spoken to him. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Inko peeked in, her eyes wide with excitement. She held out an envelope stamped with Yue's insignia, her hands trembling. Izuku took it gently, offering a reassuring smile. He needed a moment, and Inko nodded, retreating but pacing anxiously outside his door, her footsteps a soft rhythm in the quiet house. Izuku sat at his desk, the envelope heavy in his hands. He sighed, bracing himself. He tore it open and found a letter and a small device that clattered onto his desk. A hologram flickered to life, and Allmight's booming voice filled the room. He announced that Izuku had earned 167 villain points, making him the representative of the first-year students. But there was more. He also gained 60 hero points for saving an examinee, totaling 227 points, surpassing even Allmight and the number 2 hero. Congratulations were extended to him, but Izuku's anger flared as he processed the praise. He replaced his glasses, the heat subsiding as his composure returned. Opening his door, he found Inko waiting, her eyes brimming with worry and hope. His expression softened, and he pulled her into a gentle hug, assuring her that he had passed. Inko's tears soaked his shirt as she clung to him, and Izuku laughed, a rare sound that eased her fears. He promised her he was okay. Later that night, Izuku stood on Dagobah Beach, the moonlight bathing him in silver. The stars glittered above, and the ocean's murmur was a soothing counterpoint to the heat still lingering in his chest. He gazed at the sky, lost in thought, when a familiar voice broke the silence. May approached, her pink dreadlocks swaying in the breeze. She wore a loose tank top and shorts, her usual tool belt absent, giving her a softer, more relaxed look. Izuku teased her about the beach leading him to her, and May laughed, closing the distance between them. She grabbed his hand, her fingers warm against his. They reminisced about the last time they had seen each other, and Izuku playfully reminded her of the time she had tried to hit him with a wrench. Their laughter mingled with the waves, and Izuku turned to her, his gaze softening. He pulled her closer, and she blushed, feeling the warmth of his presence. As they stood together, their faces drew near, and they shared a tentative kiss that quickly deepened. The world around them faded until it was just the two of them, lost in each other. Izuku lifted her effortlessly, and they sank to the sand, cradling each other in a warm embrace. They parted, gasping for air, their eyes locked. May whispered about how special the moment was, and Izuku smiled, brushing a stray dreadlock from her face. They sat there, wrapped in each other, the moonlight casting their shadows across the sand. Izuku felt a quiet certainty settle over him. UA awaited, with its challenges and skeptics, but here, under the moon's gentle light, he was more than quirkless. He was Izuku Midoriya, forged in pride, tempered by resolve, and ready to carve his own path no matter what the world thought. The morning sun cast golden rays across Mizudafu as Izuku Midoriya stepped out of his apartment, clad in UA High's crisp uniform. The navy blazer hugged his broad shoulders, the tie neatly knotted, and his glasses lent him an air of calm restraint. His towering 6 feet 1 inch frame drew glances from passers-by, but he paid them no mind, his thoughts fixed on the day ahead. As he adjusted his bag, Inko's voice rang out, bright with pride. She launched herself into a fierce hug, her small frame barely reaching his chest, expressing her pride and wishing him an amazing day at school. Izuku smiled gently, his emerald eyes softening as he returned the embrace, careful not to overwhelm her with his strength. He stepped back, waving as he headed out. The door clicked shut behind him, and he paused on the sidewalk, the sun's rays intensifying as they bathed his skin. He removed his glasses, feeling a familiar heat surge through his veins, his muscles swelling slightly as he prepared for the day ahead. With a smirk, he shed his blazer, draping it over his shoulder, murmuring that things might get interesting today. In a single, fluid motion, he leaped, landing atop a nearby building, then sprinted across rooftops, the city blurring beneath him as he moved with effortless grace. UA High loomed ahead, its glass towers glinting like a beacon of ambition. The campus buzzed with nervous energy, first-year students weaving through the courtyard, their voices a mix of excitement and anxiety. Izuku descended from his rooftop run, landing lightly and slipping his glasses back on. The school's grandeur meant little to him. It was merely a stage to prove himself, a place to defy the world's low expectations. He navigated the halls, searching for Class 1A, his expression one of mild irritation as he muttered about the difficulty of finding a single classroom. When he finally spotted the oversized door of Class 1A, he pushed it open, only to be met with a cacophony of voices. A tall boy with glasses gestured animatedly, scolding another with spiky blonde hair for propping his feet on the desk, declaring it disrespectful to their classmates. The blonde sneered, sparks crackling from his palms, dismissing the admonition and questioning the other boy's background. The bespectacled boy introduced himself as Tenya Ida from Somei Junior High and challenged the blonde's attitude, questioning his aspirations of becoming a hero. The room's attention shifted as Izuku stepped inside, commanding silence with his presence. Ida's eyes widened in recognition, and he strode forward, faltering under Izuku's piercing gaze. Izuku acknowledged Ida, stating that there was no need for introductions. Ida squared his shoulders, undeterred, and commended Izuku for discerning the true nature of the entrance exam's hero points, apologizing for misjudging him. Izuku sighed, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face as he slipped off his glasses, his aura intensifying. He reminded Ida that his disrespect during the exam was not forgotten and that they were classmates now, nothing more. The words carried a quiet intensity, and Ida nodded stiffly, stepping back. A softer voice broke the tension as Ochako Uraraka approached, her round face beaming with joy at seeing him. Izuku's expression softened, a rare smile tugging at his lips as he acknowledged her presence. He reached out, patting her head gently, which made her blush and giggle nervously. She shyly requested him to stop, though her smile betrayed her amusement. Izuku chuckled, withdrawing his hand, and they shared a light moment. Across the room, Katsuki Bakugo seethed, his crimson eyes locked on Izuku. Memories of their last confrontation burned in his mind, fueling his determination. He silently vowed to crush Izuku, feeling the pressure of rivalry intensifying within him. Ochako's voice pulled Izuku's attention back as she expressed her curiosity about the day's events, wondering about the ceremony and their teacher. Before he could respond, a raspy voice cut through the chatter. A figure emerged from a yellow sleeping bag on the floor, his haggard face framed by dark, unkempt hair. He introduced himself as Shota Aizawa, their homeroom teacher, and declared that they needed sharper instincts, having taken too long to quiet down. The class gaped, stunned by their disheveled teacher. Aizawa tossed a stack of gym uniforms onto a desk, instructing them to put them on and head to the PE grounds immediately. As the students filed out, Izuku lingered, eyeing the uniform's tight-fitting jacket with disdain. He muttered about it, restricting his movements as he reluctantly slipped it on. A cheerful voice interrupted his thoughts. A red-haired boy with sharp teeth and a wide grin approached, introducing himself as Eijiro Kiroshima. He complimented Izuku on his strength, having heard about his impressive performance during the entrance exam. Izuku raised a brow, amused by the enthusiasm. He closed his locker, feeling the jacket constricting him, but Kiroshima's energy was infectious. Izuku's thoughts shifted back to Aizawa, contemplating whether he would earn his respect. The sun blazed over UA High's PE grounds, igniting the air with fierce intensity that mirrored the tension among Class 1A. The students stood in a loose semicircle, their faces a mix of anticipation and unease, as Aizawa announced a Quirk assessment test, with expulsion awaiting whoever ranked last. The declaration sharpened the competitive edge in the air, and the test began, each event a crucible to forge or break the aspiring heroes. The 50-meter dash came first, a blur of motion as students showcased their quirks. Some thrived, their abilities propelling them across the line in seconds. Others faltered, their powers ill-suited for speed. Izuku Midoriya stood calmly, his navy tracksuit stretched taut over his muscular frame. Katsuki Bakugo lined up beside him, smirking as he taunted Izuku about being ready to eat his dust. Izuku's gaze didn't waver, his expression one of serene indifference. The whistle blew, and Izuku moved a green blur that left only the echo of his footsteps. The machine beeped, announcing his impressive time. Bakugo froze, his own time flashing on the display. His mind reeled at the unexpected outcome, feeling the pressure of rivalry intensifying within him. The class whispered, their eyes darting between the two, sensing the tension. The tests continued: grip strength, standing long jump, side-to-side steps, and Izuku dominated each with effortless precision, careful not to unleash the full force of the mysterious power surging within him. His results drew gasps, leaving Bakugo's scowl deepening with every event as he struggled to keep pace. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Eijiro Kiroshima observed Izuku Midoriya's impressive performance, his red hair glinting as he scratched his chin, wondering about Izuku's abilities. Another student, a boy with spiky black hair, noted that Izuku had taken down a zero-pointer in the entrance exam, suggesting he must have a remarkable quirk. Bakugo scoffed, dismissing Izuku as a quirkless nobody who was merely pretending. A girl with earphone jacks gestured toward Izuku, who was casually stretching, and argued that his movements were too impressive to be fake. The final event arrived, the softball throw. Ochako Uraraka stepped up first, her quirk sending the ball soaring into the sky, earning an infinity symbol on the scoreboard. The class cheered, but Izuku, next in line, remained unfazed. He gripped the softball, feeling its weight in his calloused hand as voices buzzed around him. Kiroshima leaned forward, betting that Izuku would excel, while another student doubted he could surpass infinity but was curious to see what he could do. Izuku tightened his grip on the ball, contemplating whether to remove his glasses and resist the sun's power, but ultimately decided against it, thinking he was already near the top. With a fluid motion, he wound up, his muscles flexing as he threw the ball high into the azure sky. The machine beeped, announcing a distance of 799.5 meters. A murmur of awe swept through the class. Satisfied, Izuku turned to leave the circle when Aizawa's voice halted him. The teacher's piercing gaze and glowing red eyes created a tense atmosphere as he questioned whether that was all Izuku had to offer. The class froze, exchanging glances between student and teacher. Izuku tilted his head, his expression unreadable, and asked if there was a reason for Aizawa's scrutiny. Aizawa stepped forward, attempting to use his scarf to grab Izuku's arm, but Izuku stood firm, unyielding. The teacher's eyes narrowed, and Izuku sighed, his voice calm yet resolute as he clarified his position. He removed his glasses and tossed them to Ochako, who caught them instinctively, placing them atop her head. The transformation was immediate. Steam rose from Izuku's body as he grew taller, his muscles straining against the fabric of his uniform, revealing a fierce lion tattoo on his back that pulsed with life. His voice deepened, commanding the attention of everyone around him. He stepped forward, asserting his strength and questioning Aizawa's assumptions about his abilities. His blazing eyes locked onto Aizawa, who appeared to shrink under their intensity. The class gaped, captivated by Izuku's imposing presence. Aizawa released his scarf, his quirk deactivating as he stepped back. Izuku smiled knowingly, acknowledging Aizawa's recognition of his strength. He turned to his classmates, the heat radiating from him palpable, and encouraged them not to falter in their efforts. As he walked off to change, a stunned silence enveloped the area. Aizawa felt an unusual flicker of unease, while Allmight, hidden in his weakened form, watched with wide eyes, struggling to comprehend the power he had just witnessed. Bakugo stood frozen, his fists clenched tightly as fear, rather than anger, gripped him. Doubts crept into his mind as he recalled Izuku's words about surpassing him. Later, Izuku donned his school uniform, now tailored to fit his frame, and made his way to the support department. The halls of UA buzzed with excitement, but his thoughts were focused on the next steps of his journey. He pushed open the door to the support department, greeted by the sounds of whirring machines and the faint scent of scorched metal. Mei Hatsum's laughter rang out, accompanied by a small explosion from a workbench. Izuku greeted Mei, who was busy working on something for his weapon, her pink dreadlocks bouncing as she spun around. She expressed her excitement about the project, and Izuku leaned against the doorway, sharing his own ideas for their creation. Mei's eyes sparkled with mischief as they discussed their plans, the room humming with their shared ambition. Izuku stood ready to forge his path, a lion unbowed under the sun's unrelenting gaze. The halls of UA high buzzed with the rhythm of a typical high school, yet an undercurrent of ambition set it apart. The morning unfolded with a familiar cadence: mathematics taught by ectoplasm's precise clones, English delivered with present mix booming flair, and classical Japanese guided by midnight's sharp wit. For Class 1A, these lessons provided a grounding contrast to their heroics training, reminding them that even future heroes needed to master the basics. As the lunch bell chimed, reactions varied. Mina Ashido slumped dramatically, her pink skin glistening with exhaustion, while Denki Kaminari and Siro exchanged weary groans. Toru Hagikure's invisible form sagged, her uniform betraying her fatigue. Meanwhile, Momo Yaoyorozu, Tenya Ida, Katsuki Bakugo, and Izuku Midoriya emerged unfazed, their focus unshaken by the academic rigor. While most of Class 1A flocked to the cafeteria, Izuku slipped away, his school uniform crisp but his glasses lending a calm restraint to his towering presence. He entered a classroom in the support department, where the air hummed with the clatter of tools and the faint scent of scorched metal. Mei Hatsum, her pink dreadlocks swaying as she hunched over a workbench, was a whirlwind of focus, her hands deftly assembling a device she had dreamed of crafting 10 months ago. Sparks flew from her latest prototype, brimming with potential. Izuku leaned against the doorway, his glasses softening the intensity of his emerald gaze. A smile tugged at his lips as he watched Mei, her confidence and drive mirroring his own. He wondered, not for the first time, if their paths would have crossed without the mysterious power that had reshaped him. Would they share this bond, this spark, if he hadn't become the person he was now? Mei noticed him and teased, "You're staring, Muscles. What's on your mind?" Izuku's smile widened as he admired her dedication. He expressed his admiration, saying he cared about her and appreciated her hard work. Mei snorted, still tinkering. She insisted that flattery wouldn't speed up her progress. However, Izuku crossed the room, wrapping his arms around her waist. Mei froze, her tools clattering softly as she tilted her head to meet his gaze, feeling his warmth envelop her. His voice softened with sincerity as he told her she was incredible and that he would never forgive himself if she got hurt because of him. His words carried a weight, a vow born of the pride that burned within him. Mei's golden eyes softened, and a rare blush dusted her cheeks. She leaned into him, finding comfort in his presence. She then pulled back, her grin returning as she gestured to her workbench, reminding him that she needed to finish her project without distractions. The training grounds of UA High pulsed with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of sweat and metal as Class 1A stood clad in their hero costumes, each design a bold declaration of their ambitions. The sun blazed overhead, casting stark shadows across the mock cityscape. Izuku Midoriya emerged last from the tunnel, his presence a quiet storm. His costume was a masterpiece of Mei Hatsum's craftsmanship. A sleeveless black top hugged his chiseled frame, golden lines tracing from the shoulders to the center, converging at a lion emblem emblazoned on his right arm. Another lion gleamed as his belt buckle, anchoring dark green combat pants tucked into black boots with gleaming metal soles. Without his glasses, his emerald eyes burned with fierce confidence, his 6 feet 3 inches stature radiating an almost palpable aura of power. The class stared, awestruck. Ochako Uraraka's cheeks flushed, Ijiro Kiroshima's grin widened, and even Katsuki Bakugo's scowl faltered for a moment. Izuku apologized for keeping them waiting, his voice steady as he acknowledged he was the last to arrive. Allmight, in his Silver Age costume, cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the task. He announced that the lesson would be battle training, featuring 2-on-2 indoor battles, heroes versus villains. The heroes had 10 minutes to capture both villains or secure the bomb, while the villains had to defend the bomb, defeat the heroes, or outlast the clock. He reached for a box to draw teams, but Izuku's voice cut through the air, declaring he would go alone, stating he didn't need anyone getting in his way. All Might hesitated, meeting Izuku's gaze. The raw intensity in that gaze chilled the number one hero. Memories of their rooftop encounter flashed, and All Might nodded, conceding to Izuku's determination. Whispers rippled through the class: uncertainty, curiosity, doubt, but Izuku stood unfazed, his focus razor-sharp. The matchups were announced, and Izuku faced the towering mock building where Bakugo and Ida waited. The rest of the class followed All Might to the observation room, monitors flickering to life as they settled to watch. Izuku stood motionless, his posture relaxed but his mind racing. He anticipated Bakugo would come for him directly, while Ida would stay with the bomb, playing defense. His strategy was simple: neutralize Bakugo quickly, then hunt Ida. As All Might's voice boomed through the speakers, signaling the start, Izuku moved with deliberate calm, ducking under the low doorway into the building. He bypassed the first floor, ascending to the second, his boots echoing faintly in the dim corridors lined with concrete and steel. Halfway through the second floor, a corner erupted in a blinding flash of light and heat. Bakugo rounded it, his gauntlets sparking, a manic grin splitting his face as he unleashed a massive explosion that engulfed the hallway. The blast shook the walls, but when the haze cleared, Izuku stood untouched, his costume singed but his body unscathed. He tilted his head, a faint frown creasing his brow, questioning if that was supposed to hurt. His calm demeanor surprised Bakugo, who snarled and launched another explosion, bigger this time, the force rattling the building's frame. Izuku stood firm as the flames washed over him, leaving only faint scorch marks on his pants. Bakugo charged for a third attack, his right gauntlet glowing, but Izuku moved with blinding speed. He seized Bakugo's wrist, redirecting the blast upward, shattering the ceiling in a shower of debris. Before Bakugo could react, Izuku hoisted him off the ground effortlessly. He remarked on Bakugo's predictability, then delivered a powerful uppercut to Bakugo's solar plexus. The impact was thunderous, and Bakugo lurched forward, breathless. Izuku didn't pause, landing a straight cross to Bakugo's jaw, sending him hurtling down the hallway. Bakugo crashed into the wall, the concrete splintering under the force. Struggling to his knees, he gasped, blood trickling from his lip, his pride burning hotter than his explosions. Izuku advanced, each step deliberate, and asked Bakugo how it felt to be weaker than someone else. He reminded Bakugo of the helplessness he had endured every day he had been mocked. Bakugo staggered to his feet, panting, his crimson eyes blazing with defiance. He insisted he didn't care about Izuku's power and claimed he was still better. He craned his neck to meet Izuku's gaze, his bravado faltering under the weight of that unyielding stare. Izuku's lips curled into a cold smile, reminding Bakugo that heroes win. "So what happens when I defeat you today? Does that make you the Deku now?" Bakugo's gauntlet flashed, the grenade chamber glowing ominously. His laughter was hysterical, tinged with desperation. He prepared himself, declaring that he was going to defeat Izuku. He aimed the gauntlet, his finger hovering over the pin. Allmight's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and commanding. He warned Bakugo to stop, emphasizing the danger of his actions. Bakugo, however, dismissed the concern, insisting that Izuku wouldn't be harmed if he dodged. With a swift motion, he yanked the pin, and the hallway erupted in a massive explosion, a torrent of fire and force that shook the building. Windows shattered, walls buckled, and smoke filled the air. As the dust settled, Bakugo panted, his laughter echoing. Izuku emerged from the smoke, standing tall despite his tattered costume. He questioned Bakugo's efforts with a mocking tone, his confidence shining through. He decided to respond with a powerful attack of his own, raising his hand as the air shimmered with heat. A sphere of light formed, pulsating like a miniature sun. He unleashed the attack, sending the orb rocketing toward Bakugo, who stood frozen in shock. The impact was immense, causing floors, walls, and ceilings to crumble in a blinding flash, and Bakugo was thrown backward, unconscious before he hit the ground. The observation room fell silent as the class watched in awe. Ochako covered her mouth in disbelief, Kiroshima's eyes widened, and even Allmight's smile faltered as he processed what he had just witnessed. That power was beyond anything he had seen. A voice broke the silence, announcing a 2-minute warning. Izuku wasted no time, sprinting up the stairwell to the 4th floor, where he found Tenya Ida standing before the bomb, engines revving. Ida declared his intent to hold Izuku off for a minute, but Izuku's gaze remained steady as he advanced, calmly stating that he would end this now. Ida braced himself, engines flaring, but before he could finish his thought, Izuku moved with incredible speed, brushing the bomb just before Ida could react. The win condition was triggered, and All Might's voice boomed, declaring that the heroes had won. Ida stood frozen, disbelief etched on his face. Izuku turned to him, offering a sincere apology for not engaging in a fight. He expressed quiet pride in his victory and extended a hand, suggesting there were no hard feelings. Ida removed his helmet, respect replacing his shock, and shook Izuku's hand firmly, acknowledging his formidable skills. As they exited the building, the class watched Izuku with a mix of awe and fear. Bakugo, now conscious but battered, was carried out by recovery drones, his pride diminished. In the observation room, All Might's mind raced, questioning the nature of Izuku's power. Unaware of the scrutiny, Izuku walked toward the support department, his thoughts focused on Mei and their shared project. The sun dipped lower in the sky, but the warmth in his chest remained steady, a promise of greater challenges ahead. He was no longer the quirkless boy he was a lion, and his roar would echo through. The sun's rays danced across the pristine sands of Dagoba Beach, each grain glistening as waves of salt water lapped gently at the shore. Izuku Midoriya ran along the coastline, his boots sinking slightly with each powerful stride, the rhythm of his steps a steady drumbeat against the morning's quiet. His glasses caught the sunlight, reflecting glints of gold as he moved, his shirtless torso absorbing the warmth, fueling the fire within him. The beach, once a wasteland he had restored, was now a haven, a place to clear his mind after the chaos of Yue's early days. His thoughts drifted to Allmight, the so-called symbol of peace, whose hollow congratulations after the battle training had grated against Izuku's pride. The man's attempt to question him later had been met with a glare that silenced the hero. Now, as he jogged, he sighed, gazing at the horizon where the sun climbed higher, its light amplifying the heat in his chest. He mused about Mei finishing the weapon and wondered what gift she would appreciate. As he considered flowers or something unique, he chuckled at the thought of becoming a player. The sight of the time on his phone snapped him back to reality. His mother was preparing something special for dinner. With renewed energy, he sprinted away from the beach, eager to see Inko's creation. The next day, Izuku sat on a bus, his head resting against the window, eyes closed as the hum of the engine lulled him into thought. Class 1A was en route to the unforeseen simulation joint for rescue training, an off-campus exercise to hone their skills. His mind replayed the past few days, each moment a step in his ascent. After his victory over Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida in the battle training, Izuku returned to the observation room with Ida at his side. All Might's professional praise felt hollow, and Izuku sidestepped him, his disdain barely concealed. When asked who the MVP was, Momo Yaoyorozu raised her hand, her analysis sharp. She pointed out Ida's teamwork and dedication to protecting the bomb, noting that Bakugo had abandoned his post while Izuku, although victorious, could have bypassed the fight with his speed. Ida beamed with gratitude, and Izuku offered him a genuine smile. The rest of the battles unfolded some lopsided, others fiercely contested. Shoto Todoroki's ice had dominated, leaving a lasting impression on Izuku as he considered the boy's quiet intensity. The day ended with All Might bolting from the room, his time limit up, earning a chuckle from Izuku. The following day, Aizawa announced the election for class president and vice president. Izuku won with 5 votes, Momo with 3, and Ida with 2, making Izuku president and Momo vice president. During lunch, Izuku confided in Ida that he had voted for him. The admission startled Ida and Ochako, who sat nearby. Izuku explained that strength alone doesn't make a leader, his voice steady and confident. Ida's robotic arm gestured as he expressed his heartfelt belief that Izuku was more of a leader than he realized, prompting a laugh from Izuku. Suddenly, chaos erupted as an alarm blared, signaling a breach by the media. The cafeteria descended into panic, with students rushing toward the exits. Izuku and Ida exchanged a glance, reaching a silent agreement. Izuku handed his glasses to Ida and stepped forward, removing them. His body began to swell, steam rising as heat filled the room, creating an oppressive pressure that halted the crowd. His footsteps echoed like thunder, each one radiating power. The students turned, fear flickering in their eyes as they faced Izuku, his towering 6 feet 3 inches frame and burning gaze commanding authority. He demanded to know if this was UA or a preschool, his deep voice silencing the chaos. He questioned their lack of pride as students of such a prestigious school, urging them to find their dignity and drive to rise above their pasts. He encouraged them to be proud, bold, and to return to the cafeteria in an orderly fashion. His words cut through the panic, and the crowd complied, awed by his presence, while his classmates nodded in respect. Back in the classroom, Izuku proposed a re-vote, curious if his display had swayed opinions. To his surprise, nearly the entire class backed him. He sighed, folding his arms and expressing gratitude as their president. Applause followed, and he flashed a smile at Ochako, leaving her blushing and her heart fluttering as he took his seat, glasses back on. The bus jolted, pulling Izuku from his thoughts. Tsu Azui, with her calm demeanor, addressed him directly, noting that his quirk seemed like a mix of strength and heat, reminiscent of All Might or Endeavor. The bus fell silent, all eyes on Izuku, especially Bakugo's, which burned with suspicion. Izuku's frown flickered, his pride bristling even through his glasses, but he managed a small smile. He suggested that if he could call her Tsu, Then everyone could call him Izuku. He glanced around, his gaze steady, explaining that his quirk was a blend of his parents' abilities, his father's fire breath, and his mother's attraction of small objects. He called it Sunshine, which stockpiled solar energy, amplifying his physical abilities and allowing him to wield heat-based attacks. He likened it to Fat Gum's ability, noting that while their outputs might seem similar, his was unique. Though his explanation was a lie, it felt seamless, even as it churned his stomach. The class relaxed, satisfied, and Aizawa announced their arrival at the USJ. They stepped off the bus to face a massive dome structure. Inside, diverse climates sprawled. A flood zone, a landslide area, and a burning cityscape. Aizawa welcomed them to the unforeseen simulation joint, his voice flat. 13, the spacesuited hero, greeted them and explained the exercise, rescue training to master their quirks in crisis scenarios. She signaled Aizawa, a subtle gesture about All Might's absence that only Izuku noticed. He shrugged it off as 13 spoke about the dual nature of quirks, dangerous yet capable of good in the right hands. Izuku's attention was drawn to a black mist swirling in the plaza below. He warned Aizawa quietly that they had a problem. The class gasped as dozens of villains emerged from the mist, led by 3 figures: a misty humanoid named Kiroshima, a hulking bird-like creature, and a pale figure covered in hands that radiated menace. Aizawa ordered 13 to evacuate the students as he leaped down the stairs, his capture scarf unfurling. Izuku's mind raced, realizing that Aizawa was not a frontline fighter. He remained still as his classmates retreated, his instincts screaming to act. Kiroshima addressed the hero hopefuls, introducing himself as a member of the League of Villains and declaring their mission to eliminate All Might. He dismissed the students as inconsequential. Bakugo and Kiroshima lunged at Kiroshima, their fierce attacks proving futile as he dodged and warped them through portals. Others scattered across the USJ's zones. Izuku stood firm, his gaze locked on Kiroshima, deeming the villain no threat. As president, his duty was to protect his classmates. He allowed the portal to engulf him, ready to defend those who needed him, the heat of his pride burning brighter than ever. The portal expelled Izuku Midoriya into the air above the flood zone of the USJ, a vast expanse of water shimmering under the dome's artificial light. He plummeted toward the surface, his glasses glinting as the sun's rays fueled the heat in his chest. No panic stirred within him. He knew his body could withstand the impact. With a resounding splash, he plunged into the depths, the cold water a fleeting shock against his skin. He surfaced quickly, shaking droplets from his hair, and scanned his surroundings. Shadows moved beneath the wave's villains, their forms adapted for aquatic combat, circling like predators. A shark-like villain surged forward, fins slicing through the water. Izuku remained calm, knowing that panic would be a death sentence. As the villain closed in, jaws snapping, Izuku summoned the power within, his muscles swelling and steam curling from his skin. With a precise strike, he slammed his fist into the sharkman's snout, the force reverberating through the water. The villain rocketed backward, crashing dozens of meters away, dazed and drifting. Before Izuku could press the advantage, a green blur darted through the water, dispatching 2 more villains with swift strikes. Tsu Azui emerged, her frog-like form cutting through the current. Her tongue lashed out, wrapping around Izuku's waist. He cancelled his power surge, shrinking slightly to avoid burning her with his heat, making himself lighter for her to handle. With a powerful flick, she launched him skyward. He soared, spotting a stranded ship in the flood zone center, and landed with a thud that rocked the deck. Moments later, another impact echoed Mineta, groaning as he hit the deck, followed by Tsu, who climbed aboard with agile grace. Izuku met Tsu's gaze, his glasses back on, tempering his pride. He thanked her for the assist, admitting that water was not his strongest domain. Tsu acknowledged his gratitude while scanning the water where villains regrouped, their forms bobbing menacingly. She noted that they were outnumbered and suggested they needed a plan. Before Izuku could respond, Mineta's wails cut through the air as he lamented their fate. His small frame trembled, tears streaming as he clutched his cape. Tsu tilted her head, questioning if he was sure he was in the right class. Mineta's sobs grew louder, But Izuku's patience snapped. He seized Mineta by his cape, lifting him effortlessly to eye level. His glasses came off, tossed aside, and his body swelled, muscles bulging as the lion tattoo on his back glowed faintly through his tattered costume. His eyes blazed, flames dancing within them, a vision of unrelenting pride. He demanded to know if Mineta was there to be a hero or a blight upon their sight, expressing his disdain for Mineta's flickering pride. Stand tall, or be cast aside. Izuku dropped Mineta, who crumpled to the deck, trembling under the weight of Izuku's gaze. Turning to Tsuyu, he softened slightly, though his authority remained. She possessed all the abilities of a frog, and he needed to confirm that. Taking stock of their assets, Izuku slipped his glasses back on, his mind racing. A powerful attack could end this, but the collateral damage would be excessive. Mineta's sticky orbs could be useful, but his fear made him a liability. They needed precision. Suddenly, his eyes lit up with clarity. He had a plan. Tsuyu nodded, attentive. Mineta, still sniffling, fell silent under Izuku's commanding presence. Tsuyu asked about the strategy. Izuku explained that he would unleash a punch to create a whirlpool, drawing the villains into a single point. Then, he would use a powerful attack to knock them out cold. Tsuyu frowned, concerned. If the villains were unconscious in the water, wouldn't they drown? Not all of them might breathe underwater. Izuku smirked slightly, reassuring her that he would evaporate the water entirely. She would need to grab Mineta and leap as high as she could to avoid the heat. With her trust in him absolute, Tsuyu nodded. Izuku stepped to the ship's edge, his glasses off once more. He called upon the heat within, his body surging to its full height, muscles rippling as steam poured from his skin. The air shimmered with pressure, the deck creaking under his weight. He instructed Tsuyu to grab the coward and jump high the moment he launched the heat attack. She blushed faintly but nodded, gripping Mineta's arm. Izuku leaped, soaring 70 feet into the air, his body a silhouette against the dome's artificial sky. He floated for a moment, the sun's light amplifying his power. He declared that anyone who dared stand before him should disappear. Drawing back his arm, muscles coiling, he unleashed a punch toward the water below. The force created a shockwave that carved a 30-foot crater in the lake, the water rushing inward to form a violent whirlpool. The villains, caught off guard, were seeking into the vortex, their cries drowned by the churning waves. Izuku raised his hand, a miniature sun forming, pulsating with searing light. He roared the name of his attack and hurled the orb into the whirlpool's heart. As it descended, he extended his open hand, commanding a flare. The sun erupted, a blinding flash that vaporized the water in an instant, leaving a steaming, empty basin. The villains lay scattered across the exposed lakebed, unconscious and no longer a threat. Izuku glanced back at the ship, where Tsuyu and Mineta were falling, Tsuyu's expression one of controlled panic, Mineta's a high-pitched scream. Chuckling, Izuku launched himself toward them, catching them 30 feet from the ground with effortless grace. He landed softly, setting them down. Tsuyu exhaled, steadying herself, thanking Izuku. Mineta, wide-eyed, stared at Izuku as if he were a god. Izuku ignored him, slipping his glasses back on, his height shrinking slightly but his presence undiminished. He turned to his classmates, his voice carrying the weight of command. They needed to ensure their comrades did not perish. Who dared falter when the sun's pride burned within him? Tsuyu nodded, resolute, while Mineta, still trembling, seemed to find a spark of courage in Izuku's words. The lakebed lay barren, the villains defeated, but the battle for the USJ was far from over. Explosions echoed in the distance. Bakugo's work, no doubt, and Izuku's eyes narrowed. They would show these villains the folly of challenging those who stood tall. With Tsuyu and Mineta at his side, he charged toward the next fight, a lion ready to protect his pride, his heart ablaze with unyielding resolve. The central plaza of the Unforeseen Simulation Joint USJ was a battlefield strewn with the unconscious forms of villains, the air thick with dust and the acrid scent of scorched earth. Izuku Midoriya, Tsuyu Azui, and Minoru Mineta crept toward the plaza, Tsuyu insisting on stealth despite Izuku's indifference. His glasses were off, his lion tattoo pulsing faintly through his tattered costume, and the heat in his chest burned with unyielding pride. The journey took longer than necessary, but as they emerged from the shadows, the scene before them froze their blood. Most villains lay defeated, but the monstrous Nomu had Shota Aizawa pinned, its massive form looming over the battered teacher. The hand-covered villain, Shigaraki, mocked Aizawa with a sneer, his voice dripping with malice. His eyes flicked to Izuku and Tsuyu, narrowing with intent. He lunged, his hand outstretched to seize Tsuyu's face. Izuku moved in a blur, his hand clamping around Shigaraki's wrist with crushing force. He advised Shigaraki not to threaten his classmates in his presence, his voice calm but laced with menace. The threat hung heavy, a silent vow of retribution. Shigaraki sneered, undeterred, and called for the Nomu. The beast moved, a black blur of raw power, its fist aimed at Izuku's face. The impact landed with a thunderous crack, but Izuku didn't budge, his head unmoving, his eyes locked on the creature with cold curiosity. It was intriguing, he mused, as its strength and speed rivaled Allmight's. Shigaraki's grin widened, filled with pride, as he confirmed that Nomu was crafted to kill Allmight. Izuku raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. He ordered Tsuyu and Mineta to get Aizawa to safety at the top of the stairs. His tone carried such authority that they sprang into action without hesitation, scrambling to drag their teacher away. The plaza trembled as the entrance doors exploded inward, revealing Allmight, his face devoid of its usual grin. His eyes swept the scene, and in a flash, he dispatched the remaining conscious villains, scooping Aizawa, Tsuyu, and Mineta into his arms and leaping to the stairs. Tsuyu's voice cut through the chaos, informing Allmight that Izuku was still down there, fighting a monster meant to kill him. Allmight nodded, his expression grim, and descended to Izuku's side in an instant. He acknowledged Izuku's capabilities but asked him to find their classmates scattered across the USJ. Izuku's gaze met Allmight's, his eyes burning with disdain. For a moment, he considered refusing, but his duty as class president prevailed. With a reluctant agreement, he vanished in a burst of speed that cracked the ground, leaving a gust of wind in his wake. The conflagration zone roared with flames, the air shimmering with heat. Izuku surged through the inferno, his costume singed but his body untouched. Masahiro Ojiro battled a trio of villains, his tail whipping fiercely. Izuku descended like a meteor, his fist shattering the ground as he landed, sending shockwaves that knocked the villains flat. He instructed Ojiro to head to the plaza stairs, where the others were waiting. Ojiro nodded and sprinted off as Izuku moved on, the flames parting before him. In the mountain zone, Momo Yaoyorozu, Kyokajiro, and Denki Kaminari found themselves cornered, their defenses faltering against a single, relentless villain wielding a chain whip quirk. Izuku appeared, his silhouette towering against the rocky backdrop. With a swift palm strike, he sent the villain crashing into a boulder, rendering him unconscious. He instructed the trio to head to the plaza stairs, his tone leaving no room for argument. The trio nodded, gratitude evident in their eyes, and fled. The landslide zone and ruins zone were empty, the villains either dispatched or fled. In the downpour zone, sheets of rain obscured the air, but Izuku found Fumikage Tokoyami and Koji Koda fending off a pair of water-manipulating villains. Izuku's arrival was like a storm. His fist met one villain's chest, sending him skidding through the mud, while a sweeping kick took down the other. He directed them to the plaza stairs, and they nodded, hurrying off. 3 minutes later, Izuku landed back in the central plaza with a thud that echoed through the dome. All Might grappled with the Nomu, his punches shaking the ground but failing to overpower the beast. Shoto Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, and Eijiro Kiroshima watched from a distance, their faces tense. Izuku appeared beside Todoroki, who spared him a glance but remained silent. Izuku called out, mocking All Might's struggle. He noted that he had secured the others and offered to take All Might's place, asserting his own power. His words rang with unshakable confidence, freezing the plaza in awe. Shigaraki's thoughts churned, recognizing Izuku as a formidable opponent rather than a mere background character. Before anyone could respond, the Nomu charged, its fist aimed at Izuku's chest. Izuku met it with his own fist, their collision sending a shockwave that cracked the plaza's tiles. The beast's eyes widened, sensing a worthy foe. Izuku grinned, his pride ignited, and declared that they would engage in battle. The Nomu swung again, its speed a blur, but Izuku matched it, parrying with forearms that sparked against the beast's blows. He ducked under a massive haymaker and countered with a knee to the Nomu's gut, the impact resonating through its frame. The beast staggered but lunged again, claws slashing. Izuku spun, narrowly dodging, and delivered an uppercut to the Nomu's sternum, the force echoing like thunder. The creature rippled but remained steadfast. Shigaraki laughed, his voice manic, explaining that the Nomu had shock absorption, soaking up every blow. Izuku's frown deepened, and he leaped back to create distance. He decided to use a special gift crafted for him. He raised his arm, fingers splayed, and made a grabbing motion. For a moment, nothing happened. Shigaraki opened his mouth to mock, but then the ceiling exploded, debris raining down. A gleaming object shot through the air, and Izuku snatched it with effortless precision. In his hand was a massive, one-sided golden battle axe, its blade curled and wicked. The handle, wrapped in dark green, was designed for one-handed wielding with a guard of 4 evenly spaced spikes. Twin spearhead-like blades jutted from the top and opposite side, glinting with menace. The weapon radiated power, its presence silencing the plaza. Izuku declared that it was Divine Axe Rida, forged for the lion's sin of pride. The Nomu took a step back, its instincts sensing the threat. Shigaraki's laughter faltered, his eyes wide. Todoroki, Bakugo, and Kiroshima stared, awestruck, while Allmight's jaw tightened. Izuku raised a single finger, his gaze locked on the Nomu, proclaiming himself as the lion's sin of pride and asserting that his wrath was unyielding. He charged, swinging Rida in a golden arc. The Nomu roared, meeting the strike with a fist, but the axe's edge bit into its arm. Izuku pressed forward, his movements a blur of precision and power. He spun, slashing Rida across the Nomu's chest, the blade carving deep gashes. The beast howled and retaliated with a barrage of punches, each one shaking the ground. Izuku danced through them, his agility defying the Nomu's speed, and countered with a sweeping strike that sent the creature skidding across the plaza, cracking the concrete. Izuku taunted the Nomu, questioning its might and asserting that it was pathetic to challenge him. He raised Rida high, the axe glowing with a fiery aura, and unleashed a powerful strike that sent the Nomu crashing through a wall, its body battered but still stirring. Shigaraki screamed in frustration, but Izuku's gaze remained unwavering. He advanced, Rida resting on his shoulder, his presence a blazing sun amidst the chaos. He declared that the villain could either flee or fall, for none stood equal in his presence. The battle was far from over, but Izuku stood as a lion, his pride a beacon, ready to protect his class and shatter any who dared oppose him. Izuku expressed that the weapon was a gift from his dear benefactor and that he would use it to achieve his dream. He approached the Nomu, which sensed the threat and advanced, stopping just 5 feet away, their gazes locked. Izuku's inquisitive, the Nomu's blank. Shigaraki laughed, dismissing Izuku's confidence. Izuku turned, curious about Shigaraki's name. Shigaraki introduced himself, but Izuku's grin grew savage as he let out a bellowing laugh that echoed through the plaza, filled with untamed pride. He swung Rida with blinding speed, slicing through the Nomu's midsection and cleaving it in half. The creature collapsed, its halves thudding to the ground. The plaza fell silent, the class atop the stairs gaping, Allmight's eyes wide, and Bakugo's fists trembling with suppressed rage. Izuku mused about the ease of his strike, questioning Shigaraki's offering and asserting that none could stand before him. Shigaraki ranted about cheating, while Kurogiri's voice cut through the tension, reminding everyone that shock absorption wasn't the Nomu's only quirk. The words froze the plaza, and Izuku raised a curious eyebrow as Shigaraki's panic subsided, noting that the Nomu was beginning to repair itself. Within moments, the creature stood whole, roaring with renewed vigor. Shigaraki boasted about the Nomu's hyper-regeneration and commanded it to eliminate the challenger. The Nomu charged, its arm raised. Izuku swung Rida, severing the limb at the shoulder, the blade flashing gold. The creature's head snapped as Izuku followed with a powerful kick to its chest, disrupting its shock absorption and sending it skidding back. He considered another swing but paused, thinking that carving it to pieces would make him seem savage. He wanted to test its limits with Rita's might first. Turning to All Might, he instructed him to hold the axe, tossing it in his direction. All Might fumbled, catching it but nearly buckling under its weight. Izuku told him it was heavy and to keep it in sight before turning back to the regenerated Nomu. The two clashed in a tempest of power. The Nomu's blows were relentless, each punch creating shockwaves, but Izuku met them head-on with ease until he decided to use Rita, which he retrieved in a flash from All Might. He swung the axe in sweeping arcs, each strike a golden blur that carved gashes across the Nomu's chest. The beast roared, its wounds closing, and countered with a flurry of claws. Izuku spun, Rita's spearhead blades slashing the Nomu's flank, drawing dark fluid. He taunted the creature, challenging its might and daring it to confront the lion's pride. The Nomu lunged with blinding speed, but Izuku parried with Rita's guard, the spikes catching the beast's fist. He twisted, bringing the axe's main blade down, slicing through the Nomu's shoulder. The creature staggered, regenerating, and Izuku pressed the assault, his laughter echoing with confidence. He swung Rita in a diagonal arc, the blade biting deep into the Nomu's torso, sending it crashing into a pillar, which crumbled under the impact. Shigaraki cackled, claiming that the Nomu absorbed all attacks and would heal from anything Izuku did, declaring him done for. Izuku's eyes narrowed, his laughter fading to a cold smirk. He questioned who decided that his attacks had no effect or that this monster could defeat him. Raising his right arm, he pointed skyward with a single finger. The air shimmered, and a sun formed as large as his body, radiating searing heat and pressure that pressed against every soul in the plaza. All Might thought to himself, wondering just what this kid was capable of, while Shigaraki's mind screamed in panic. With a roar, Izuku called forth the cruel sun, which blazed brighter and hotter, its light blinding. He declared that he alone decided his fate and moved his hand forward, launching the orb at the Nomu. The creature raised its arms to block, but the sun engulfed it, scorching its flesh as it skidded back, propelled by the force. Izuku raised Rita, channeling his power into the axe. He bellowed Sun's judgment, swinging the blade downward. A wave of heat and force erupted, merging with the cruel sun, and the Nomu was launched skyward, smashing through the ceiling in a shower of debris. The sun carried it higher, out of sight, its roars fading into silence. Izuku stood unyielding, showing no hint of fatigue. He turned to Shigaraki and Kurojairi, Rita resting on his shoulder, and calmly asked if they wished to continue, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the plaza. Bakugo fumed, his pride battered, while Todoroki and Kiroshima stared in awe. Shigaraki screamed in disbelief, questioning how Izuku, who was supposed to be an easy target, had become a formidable opponent. Izuku tilted his head, amused by the notion of being a secret boss. He stepped forward, Rita gleaming, and declared himself the lion's son of pride, asserting that none could stand equal in his presence. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, and Shigaraki collapsed, clutching his leg and arm as Snipe's bullets found their mark. Kurojairi warped to his side, enveloping him in mist, and they vanished. Izuku glanced up, seeing Snipe and the other teachers at the plaza's edge. He noted that backup had arrived and strode to All Might, retrieving Rita and resting it on his shoulder. He suggested they join the others, and Kiroshima nodded with a grin. Bakugo, still fuming, crossed his arms but followed, while Todoroki gave a curt nod and trailed behind. As the group ascended the stairs, Izuku paused, locking eyes with All Might. He asked if All Might was so frail that his true self would soon be revealed, his voice low and cutting. Without waiting for a reply, he turned, striding toward his classmates, who fell silent under his towering presence. He approached Ochako, who held his glasses, her face flushed. With a gentle smile, he lifted her onto his shoulder, her squeak of surprise drawing a chuckle from him. He declared that they would ensure their pride remained unbroken as he led his class forward, a lion among heroes, with his axe symbolizing his unyielding will. Tamura Shigaraki stumbled through the portal, collapsing onto the grimy floor of a dimly lit room, groaning as pain lanced through his bullet wounds. Blood seeped from his leg and arm, staining the concrete. Across the room, a TV monitor flickered, a distorted voice emanating from it, cold and calculating. The voice noted the wounds he bore and the absence of the Nomu, assuming it had been defeated. Shigaraki rasped, thick with frustration, that the Nomu had been beaten not by All Might, but by a secret boss. His words dripped with venom as his hands twitched in frustration. The voice paused, a rare note of surprise creeping in, and asked him to describe this person. Shigaraki explained that the kid was taller, almost bigger than All Might, stronger too. He wielded a massive axe and unleashed a fire attack that obliterated the Nomu. What stood out most was his disrespect for All Might, calling him old and weak while claiming to be stronger. His voice grew heated as he described the boy's appearance. The voice on the monitor processed this information, caught off guard. It had assumed the successor would be All Might's, but the boy's disrespect and use of heat-based attacks were not traits of his brother's quirk. The voice inquired about the boy's appearance, and Shigaraki detailed his bushy dark green and black hair, shining green eyes, and freckles, mentioning that All Might called him Midoriya. The voice commended Shigaraki, framing his failure as a lesson. It instructed him to heal and promised they would talk later. The feed cut, leaving silence in the room. The figure behind the monitor leaned back, a grin spreading across their shadowed face. They mused about a hero hopeful who surpassed All Might and disdained him, considering this new piece on the board as one they could bend to their will, willingly or not. A smug laughter echoed in the dark. This is the follow-up report on yesterday's incident at the UA Rescue Training Facility, where Hero Corps students were attacked by villains, a news reporter announced, her voice steady as images of the USJ flashed across screens nationwide. These criminals, calling themselves the League of Villains, plotted to kill All Might, who had been a teacher at UA since spring. Citizens paused in the streets, eyes glued to massive displays broadcasting the news. That night, under a canopy of stars, Izuku Midoriya lay on a beach towel at Dagoba Beach, the waves whispering against the shore. He bit into a sweet pastry, its warmth a faint echo of the heat in his chest. His hand rested in Mei Hatsum's pink dreadlocks, her head nestled against him, her eyes half closed in contentment. Izuku chuckled, feeling the moon's faint glow stir a familiar fire within him, a mirror to the sun's power. He shifted closer, letting Mei bask in his warmth, their quiet intimacy a shield against the world's chaos. The next day, in UA's meeting room, Detective Tsukachi briefed the faculty. The police had investigated the League of Villains. No one named Shigaraki in his 20s or 30s was registered with a disintegration quirk, nor was there a Kurogiri with a warp gate. They were likely using aliases, possibly not even citizens. When Shigaraki's wounds healed, they would strike again. A nuisance, Snipe, the cowboy-hatted teacher, grumbled. All Might muttered about the ringleader, drawing Nizu's attention. He noted that it was a bold attack, one normal people wouldn't dare attempt. Shigaraki had rambled wildly, not revealing his quirk but bragging about Nomus. When things went south, he lost control. The quirk display was meant to force All Might's hand, but he trailed off. Nizu remarked that it was foolish to squander the advantage of unknown quirks against heroes, with Tsukachi nodding in agreement. All Might added that Shigaraki made childish claims with a straight face, believing everything would go his way. The picture he formed was of a man-child, clinging to a childish sense of omnipotence. A teacher with an X-shaped scar questioned the idea of a child with power, while Midnight suggested that perhaps he never received quirk counseling in school. Snipe pressed for the relevance of that point. Tsukachi explained that 72 villains had been arrested at USJ, all small-time thugs from back alleys. The issue was how they rallied behind this man-child. In a hero-saturated world, oppressed villains might be drawn to his simplistic evil. Snipe noted that plenty of people didn't know what to do with their quirks, prompting Midnight to sigh in alarm. Tsukachi expressed gratitude to the heroes, stating they could focus on their investigation, expanding their search and assisting in arrests. Nizu mused about the man-child, catching All Might's eye. In some ways, he resembled their students. Someone was cultivating his malice, and Allmight thought about the potential consequences. UA reopened, and Class 1A settled into their classroom, the buzz of the USJ incident lingering. Toru Hagakure asked Mizo Shoji and Masahiro Ojiro if they had watched the news the previous night. They nodded, with Hagakure lamenting that she didn't stand out at all. Shoji agreed, while Ojiro flinched at the thought of the girls in Class 1E. Denki Kaminari dismissed it as just news channels hyping things up, and Eijiro Kiroshima admitted he was surprised. Kyoka Jiro pointed out that the hero course that churned out pros had been attacked, and Hanta Siro sighed, wondering what would have happened without the teachers. Minoru Mineta yelped, jumping in his seat, while Katsuki Bakugo roared for silence. Izuku's calm but irritated voice cut through the noise, commanding attention. Bakugo snarled, questioning why he should listen to Izuku. In a flash, Izuku's hand shot out, stopping inches from Bakugo's face, the air crackling with tension. Sweat beaded on Bakugo's forehead as he felt the weight of Izuku's presence. Izuku warned him to test his patience and withdrew his hand, leaving Bakugo shaken. Tenya Ida shouted for everyone to take their seats as the morning homeroom was about to start. Siro quipped back, and Ida sat, fists shaking. Ochako Uraraka soothed Ida, her gaze flickering to Izuku with concern. Mina Ishido leaned back to ask Tsu about their homeroom teacher, nearly falling until Tsu caught her. The door slid open, revealing Aizawa, swathed in bandages. He muttered a greeting, and the class exclaimed in surprise at his early return. Kaminari expressed horror at Aizawa's determination, while Kiroshima nodded in approval. Ida raised his hand, asking if Aizawa was really all right, and Ochako whispered her doubts. Izuku, with a warm aura, pointed out that forcing himself to teach was illogical. Aizawa stated that his well-being didn't matter, emphasizing that the fight wasn't over yet. Bakugo smirked at the mention of a fight, while Izuku muttered in concern. Mineta squeaked at the thought of villains again, and Aizawa announced that the UA Sports Festival was drawing near. The class erupted in excitement, with Kiroshima echoing the enthusiasm before Kaminari covered his mouth to silence him. Jiro raised concerns about the timing after the attack, and Ojiro added his worries about another strike. Aizawa explained that the administration believed the festival would show that the threat was handled, with increased security. He emphasized that this was a huge opportunity for them, not something they would cancel due to a failed villain attack. Mineta whined about the festival being just a festival, prompting Izuku to turn sharply and remind him of its importance. Mineta protested, fearing for his safety, while Aizawa clarified that the UA Sports Festival was Japan's most watched event, where top heroes would scout them. Momo agreed, noting the potential for scouting, while Mineta retorted about the risks involved. Kaminari pointed out that sidekick gigs after graduation often came from this event, but Jiro teased him about the possibility of remaining a sidekick forever. Aizawa stressed that scouting meant experience and popularity, and this festival opened doors. He warned that it was a once-a-year chance, and no aspiring hero could afford to miss it. The class chorused their understanding, affirming their commitment to training. Hours later, after Cementas's modern literature class, the lunch bell rang. Class 1A buzzed about the sports festival, some excited, others nervous. Kiroshima expressed his enthusiasm, while Siro grinned about their potential to shine. Rikido Sato punched his palm, affirming the need to seize the opportunity, and Fumikage Tokoyami agreed. Kaminari expressed jealousy over Shoji's unique quirk, to which Shoji replied that usefulness mattered more than flash. Izuku observed their excitement, noting that it showed they would give their all. A playful smack on his shoulder made him chuckle as he turned to see Ochako's mischievous eyes. She encouraged him to do their best, and he playfully pulled her onto his lap, her blush deepening. He agreed with her sentiment, and Ochako leapt up, her competitive spirit reignited, rallying everyone for their upcoming challenge. She shouted with determination, a pink aura flaring around her as she punched the air. Several students echoed her enthusiasm, raising their fists in support. Ochako repeated her declaration, her excitement contagious. Tsu tilted her head, asking if Ochako was okay. At lunch, Izuku and Mei found a quiet spot in the courtyard, sitting beneath the shade of a tree with their cafeteria meals spread out. They shared bites, their closeness drawing the attention of others. Upper-year girls cooed at the sight, while other couples mirrored their intimacy on the clear day. A blue-haired third-year gushed about how adorable they were, prompting her red-headed friend to smile and tell her to calm down and eat. A muscular blonde teen remarked on Izuku's strength, having heard about his fight at USJ. A navy-haired teen sighed, expressing disbelief at the thought of battling villains so early in his career. The blue-haired girl encouraged him, reminding him that he was a third year and past that point. The redhead teased him about being a downer. Izuku overheard their conversation, but his focus remained on Mei, who leaned closer and kissed him softly. He embraced her, resting his head atop hers, sharing warmth in a peaceful moment. That evening, Izuku returned to Dagoba Beach, where the gentle waves lapped under a starlit sky. Sitting on a towel with his glasses off, he gazed at the ocean, the faint glow of his lion tattoo reflecting the moonlight. The tranquil night stirred a quiet heat within him, a softer echo of the sun's fire. He exhaled, feeling calm, his pride tempered yet ever-present. He mused about who would dare challenge the night when the lion's heart burned eternal, a faint smile on his lips. For now, he was content, a king at rest, his resolve unshaken. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the day's last class, Class 1A began packing their belongings, the room filled with the rustle of bags and chatter. A few students paused, catching a muffled sound from the hallway. When Ochako opened the door to leave, she froze at the sight of a corridor packed with students from other classes, their eyes fixed on Class 1A. She exclaimed in surprise, questioning why they were all there. Tenya stepped forward, asking if they had business with their class. Minoru demanded to know if they were trying to hold them hostage. Katsuki sneered, striding to the door and explaining that they were scouting the competition, as Class 1A had faced real villains and they wanted to see them for themselves. Some students from Class 1A bristled at Katsuki's abrasive tone. Ochako frowned while Minoru gaped at him, and Izuku shook his head, feeling exasperated by Katsuki's typical behavior. Katsuki declared that at least now they knew what a future pro looked like and told the crowd to move along. Izuku thought to himself, resigned to Katsuki's permanent attitude. Ida admonished Katsuki, insisting that he couldn't just call people extras, because he didn't know them. A purple-haired student pushed through the crowd, remarking that he had heard Class 1A survived a real villain attack but found them to be rather arrogant. He locked eyes with Katsuki, unflinching, and questioned if everyone in the hero course was delusional or just him. Katsuki growled, his frustration evident as Class 1A waved frantically, trying to defuse the tension. The purple-haired teen continued, expressing disappointment at finding a group of egomaniacs. He revealed that he had wanted to be in the hero course but was forced into another track. He explained that if he and his peers performed well in the sports festival, they could transfer to the hero course, which meant taking spots from Class 1A. Several students stiffened at the reminder, and Katsuki looked ready to snap. The purple-haired teen calmly declared that if they didn't bring their best, he would take their spot. He emphasized that he didn't put in extra work before and after the entrance exams to lose to anyone who wasn't serious about becoming a hero. Class 1A collectively wondered where this guy had come from. Another voice shouted from the crowd, a teen with messy, chin-length gray hair pushing forward. He expressed his desire to see Class 1A, but accused them of being punks who thought they were better than others. Several students groaned internally, fearing that everyone would hate their class now. Izuku stepped forward, feeling the heat rising beneath his glasses. He questioned when any of them had claimed to be better than the other class. The gray-haired teen blinked, caught off guard. Izuku pressed on, curious how the teen reached that conclusion since none of them had said anything except for Katsuki's usual abrasive remarks. The gray-haired teen fumbled for words as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ochako stood close to Izuku, pointing out that the other student had jumped to conclusions. The gray-haired teen sheepishly admitted his mistake, introducing himself as Tetsu from Class 1B. He apologized for losing his cool after hearing Katsuki speak. Ochako reassured him that it was fine, noting that Katsuki had a way of irritating everyone when he spoke. Katsuki shouted in frustration as he stomped through the crowd. Ochako feigned concern, prompting Izuku to place a hand on her head and calm her with a smile. The purple-haired teen sighed, acknowledging that maybe Class 1A wasn't all full of themselves. However, he reiterated his declaration of war, stating that he would secure one of the 40 seats in the hero course by the end of the festival. He turned and walked away, causing the crowd to disperse. Mina remarked that the encounter had been different, and the tension in Class 1A eased as they grabbed their bags and left. Izuku remained silent on the walk, prompting Mei to pinch his cheek and ask what was on his mind. Rubbing his face, Izuku's eyes gleamed with excitement as he expressed his eagerness for the competition, feeling his blood boil with anticipation. The following 2 weeks saw Hero Corps students and those aiming for it training relentlessly. UA's gym and track buzzed with activity, a yearly ritual that amused the teachers except for Aizawa, who rolled his eyes while struggling to sip coffee through his bandages, his colleagues chuckling around him. The sports festival began with Mina expressing her disappointment in Class 1A's waiting room, where everyone was dressed in standard UA gym uniforms. Momo reminded her that the uniforms ensured fairness, as other classes were also without costumes, leveling the playing field aside from quirk advantages. Rikido Sato fidgeted nervously, wondering what the first round would be this year, stating that the anticipation was the worst. Fumikage Tokoyami, arms crossed and eyes closed, asserted that they must face whatever challenges the organizers presented. Mizo Shoji agreed, emphasizing that they needed to demonstrate their ability to handle anything like true heroes. Ida announced that it was time to enter the stadium, and the class stood ready to prove themselves. Todoroki approached Izuku, who was chatting with Ochako, her playful punches met with his smirks. Todoroki bluntly stated that he and Izuku were the strongest in the room, and that Izuku was likely stronger than him. Bakugo bristled at this, nearly shouting in response. Izuku raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Todoroki's confidence. Todoroki declared that regardless of Izuku's power, he would beat him. The room fell silent, shocked by the quiet teen's bold words. Kaminari blinked, surprised, while Kiroshima tried to ease the tension by reminding them that the festival was about to start. When the first-year students saw the display screen, they exclaimed in unison about the obstacle race. Midnight explained that the course would be a full lap around the stadium, totaling 4 kilometers. She warned them of 2 rules: they had to run the entire course without shortcuts, or they would be disqualified, and no attacking other students was allowed. Present Mike amplified the excitement, urging the students to play fair and return first to win. The crowd cheered as the students moved to the starting line. Izuku sighed, feeling the sun's warmth as he glanced at his peers. The Hero Corps students radiated determination, their desire to succeed igniting a fire within them. He noticed the same resolve in others, especially the purple-haired teen who had declared war on Class 1A and Mei Hatsum, who flashed him a competitive smile. Izuku returned the smile, pride swelling within him. As the countdown began, he wondered what the prize for winning might be, speculating that UA could offer an advantage for the next round or a hidden challenge. As the yellow light blinked out, Izuku resolved to do his best, grinning as power surged through him. He declared to himself that even with more competitors around he would win. His body surged with energy as the green light flashed, signaling the start. Midnight and Mike shouted in unison, and in an instant, every student surged forward. Izuku leaped, clearing the crowd faster than most could register, a blur of green and gold soaring above the chaos. Present Mike eagerly asked Aizawa for commentary, but Aizawa expressed his uncertainty about being up there. Mike pressed on, wanting to know what the crowd should watch in the first few minutes. Aizawa noted that the moves made in this opening section would be crucial as the first years rushed into the narrow tunnel. Inside, shouts echoed as students squeezed together, the tunnel too tight for all to pass. It was a deliberate test of ingenuity, forcing them to outsmart the bottleneck. Suddenly, a chill filled the air, and the floor iced over, freezing most students' shoes to the ground. Alarmed cries filled the tunnel as Todoroki sprinted past, leaving a trail of ice behind him, declaring his intention to win the race. Bakugo roared in response, blasting into the air with explosions, while Kiroshima leaped to clear the ice. Momo vaulted over the ice with a pole she conjured from her palm. The purple-haired teen apologized as he parkoured over trapped students, using them as stepping stones. Aoyama declared that his sparkle would not be stopped by Todoroki's ice, propelling himself through the air with his laser. Mina shouted as her acid-dissolving shoes cleared patches in the ice, while Ochako floated above the track, despite feeling uneasy. Tsuyu leaped beside her, using her frog quirk to navigate the tunnel. Bakugo challenged Todoroki, determined to outpace him. As Todoroki refocused on the track, he blinked in surprise. Izuku was already far ahead, having cleared the tunnel entirely. He wondered when Izuku had passed him, unable to recall seeing him. Present Mike announced that Izuku had taken the lead, having launched ahead before Todoroki's ice trap struck the tunnel. Aizawa noted that Izuku's decisive action to leap over the tunnel showcased his enhanced strength. Mineta taunted Todoroki, bouncing over the ice with his sticky orbs, but he was suddenly sent tumbling aside by a metallic fist as dozens of one-pointer robots from the entrance exam burst through the track's walls. 8 zero-pointers emerged from the forest, dust billowing around them. Present Mike excitedly announced the appearance of enemies, framing it as a test of strength and cunning. Students gasped in shock, realizing that this was the obstacle they had been warned about, staring at the towering machines with a mix of fear and determination. They couldn't get through, a third student exclaimed, daunted by the barrier. Todoroki mused about the challenges the others faced in their exams as he sized up the robots. Momo wondered where the school had found funding for such advanced machines while standing with Ochako and Kyoka. Izuku, barely slowing down, struck first. A massive bang echoed as he shoulder-tackled a zero-pointer, sending it reeling, its treads lifting off the ground. He commanded it to leave, pressing his hands against its metal torso. Heat surged from his palms, the metal glowing red, then orange, yellow, and finally white as it melted. The zero-pointer collapsed, bisected by molten ruin, stunning the crowd. The excitement in the stadium was palpable as the crowd cheered, their energy a living pulse. The first-year students gathered on the field, their breaths visible in the crisp air of UA's sports festival. The obstacle race had just concluded, with Izuku Midoriya's blazing victory cementing his place as a force to be reckoned with. Confetti drifted in the air, catching the sunlight like scattered embers, as Midnight took the stage, her whip cracking to silence the masses. She declared that the obstacle race was just the warm-up and introduced the second event, the Cavalry battle. The screen behind her flashed, revealing a diagram of teams carrying a rider. Each team would consist of 2 to 4 members, with one designated as the rider and the rest as horses. Each team carried a headband worth points based on their obstacle race ranking, with the first-place winner, Izuku Midoriya, carrying a headband worth 1 million points. Taking his team's headband would guarantee a spot in the next round. The crowd erupted, and the first years turned to Izuku, their eyes a mix of awe, envy, and determination. Class 1A, clustered near him, felt the weight of those stares. Izuku stood tall, his bulked-up form radiating heat, his green eyes gleaming with unshakable pride. He thought to himself about who would dare challenge the lion's throne. Denki Kaminari exclaimed in disbelief about the 1 million points, realizing everyone would be gunning for Midoriya. Kyoka Jiro commented on the target on his back, wishing him good luck. Ijiro Kiroshima acknowledged the challenge but encouraged Izuku, confident in his abilities. Izuku surveyed the field, unperturbed, thinking that their efforts would only burn in his radiance. Present Mick's voice boomed from the commentary booth, praising Midoriya's confidence as he stood there like he owned the place. Aizawa, beside him, sighed heavily, wishing for a quieter environment. The students had 15 minutes to form teams, and the field buzzed with frantic negotiations. Izuku stood alone, arms crossed, his presence a beacon of defiance. He envisioned charging through the fray, headband secure, leaving all challengers behind. His power surged, the air around him shimmering with heat, as if the sun itself crowned him. Before he could stride off, a familiar voice cut through his thoughts. Mei Hatsum bounded over, her pink dreadlocks bouncing, her eyes gleaming with excitement. She was decked out in a dizzying array of self-made gadgets, hoversalls, wire launchers, and something resembling a mini jetpack strapped to her back. She insisted that he team up with her, claiming that her inventions needed the spotlight, and he was the perfect stage. Izuku raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet proud. He stated that he was the sun and needed no aid to shine. Mei retorted that even the sun needed a cool gadget to make it pop and insisted that they could win together. She demonstrated her hover sols, lifting slightly off the ground and showcasing her skills with a wire that snagged a nearby pole, yanking her forward with glee. Izuku's smirk softened, her enthusiasm was infectious, and her tech could amplify his dominance. He agreed, but made it clear that he would carry the team, not the other way around. Mei squealed in delight, already imagining their victory pose. Before he could say more, Ochako floated over, mock indignation on her face. She declared that she wouldn't be left out and insisted on joining the team. She crossed her arms, hovering slightly above the ground, determined to keep Mei in check and share the glory. Mei welcomed the addition, excited about the growing team. Izuku chuckled, the heat around him flaring briefly as he declared that Ochako and Mei would ride on his shoulders, positioning himself as the horse none could match his strength. His voice carried a regal authority, his muscles flexing as he towered over them. Ochako blushed but nodded, determined not to be dropped. Izuku reassured her that no one would fall under his protection. Mei cooed at the sweet sentiment before shifting gears to discuss strategy. She outlined how her wire arrows could snag headbands from a distance, and her hover sols could provide a boost for dodging. Ochako could make them weightless to confuse the competition, while Izuku would continue being a powerful force. Present Mike cheered from the booth, announcing the formation of Team Midoriya, comprised of Hatsum from support and Uraraka from 1A. This trio possessed power, technology, and gravity-defying flair. Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling exasperated. Mick's enthusiasm was relentless, and Aizawa warned him that if he said, "awesome," one more time, he would be forced to leave the booth. While acknowledging that they were a strong team, Aizawa noted that Midoriya was carrying 1,000,000 points, making them a prime target for every other team. It was a test of endurance and strategy. Mike laughed, calling Aizawa spoilsport, but he agreed that the formation of teams was chaotic, resembling a feeding frenzy. The field was alive with alliances. Shoto Todoroki had teamed up with Momo Yaoyorozu, Tenya Ida, and Denki Kaminari, their headbands totaling a respectable 620 points. Katsuki Bakugo barked orders as he rallied Eijiro Kiroshima, Hanta Siro, and Mina Ishido. Their points at Hitoshi Shinszo from General Studies formed a team with 3 others from Class 1C, their combined points modest but their determination fierce. Even Tetsu from Class 1B led a squad, grinning as he eyed Izuku's headband. As teams finalized, Izuku knelt, allowing Ochako and Mei to climb onto his shoulders. Ochako settled on his left, gripping his head for balance, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She exclaimed that this was higher than she expected, her legs dangling. Mei, on his right, was already tinkering with a gadget, muttering about optimal move vectors. She instructed Izuku to hold still as she calibrated her devices for maximum effect, accidentally poking him with a screwdriver and earning a playful glare. The UA Sports Festival Stadium thrummed with energy, the crowd's fervor palpable as the first-year students regrouped after the exhilarating cavalry battle. Izuku Midoriya stood among his classmates, his gym uniform slightly singed from his own heat, the lion tattoo on his back pulsing faintly through the fabric. His glasses were off, and his green eyes shone with pride, drawing wary glances from competitors and awed stares from spectators. The 1,000,000-point headband had secured his team's victory, but the burden of being the prime target only fueled his determination. The field was a chaotic blend of trampled earth and melted ice, remnants of the earlier battle, and the air buzzed with anticipation for the final event, the one-on-one tournament. Midnight strode onto the stage, her whip snapping through the air, silencing the crowd. She praised the first years for their performance in the cavalry battle and announced that the final event would be a one-on-one tournament. The top 16 from the cavalry battle would face off in single combat, showcasing their strength, strategy, and spirit. Although some believed others had not given it their all, she found it youthful. The matchups would be randomized, and she urged everyone to check the board. The massive screen flickered, displaying the bracket. Izuku's name was at the top, and his first opponent was Itsuka Kendo from Class 1B. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kendo's big fist Quirk was formidable, and her tactical mind was even sharper. Izuku felt a faint smirk form on his lips, considering her a worthy test. Present Mick's voice blasted from the commentary booth, nearly shaking the stands as he exclaimed about the exciting lineup. He announced that Midoriya was up first against Kendo from 1B, calling it a clash of titans. Aizawa, slouched in his seat with bandages peeking from his collar, groaned in response, warning Mike that he was close to taping his mouth shut. He acknowledged Midoriya's overwhelming power but pointed out that Kendo was a real threat with her quirk and intellect. This would be a fight of brawn versus brains. As the students dispersed to prepare, Izuku made his way toward the waiting area, his stride purposeful, heat trailing behind him. The corridor was quiet, muffling the distant roar of the crowd. Before he reached the prep room, a lanky figure stepped into his path. Toshinori Yagi, All Might's frail form, his earnest eyes filled with hesitation. Toshinori asked to speak with Izuku, who stopped, his expression hardening as the air around him grew warmer. He expressed his impatience for fakers, urging Toshinori to speak quickly. Toshinori flinched but pressed on, raising his hands in a placating gesture. He acknowledged that Izuku didn't trust him and understood why. He praised Izuku's extraordinary power and expressed a desire to offer guidance to help him harness it for the greater good. Izuku's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp as he questioned Toshinori's authority to offer guidance. He declared himself the lion's sin of pride, forged by his own will and benefactor's gift, asserting that he needed no counsel from a fading star. He stepped closer, heat radiating from him, making Toshinori sweat. He challenged Toshinori's understanding of power, insisting that he knew only its shadow, and warned him to step aside or face the consequences. Toshinori's shoulders sagged, but he stood his ground, insisting he was not Izuku's enemy. He saw a hero in Izuku but cautioned that pride could blind even the strongest. He pleaded for Izuku. "Listen." Izuku interrupted, his voice echoing in the corridor as he declared that his path was his alone. He instructed Toshinori to save his words for those who needed them and brushed past him, leaving Toshinori in a haze of lingering heat, worry etched into his gaunt face. Moments later, Izuku found himself in a secluded prep room, the door clicking shut behind him. The air was cool, a stark contrast to the warmth he exuded. Before he could settle, a knock sounded, and Shoto Todoroki entered, his heterochromatic eyes locked on Izuku with a fierce intensity. Todoroki closed the door and stated that they needed to talk. Izuku leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his tattoo pulsing faintly as he urged Todoroki to speak, warning him that his patience was limited. Todoroki's jaw tightened, and his left side frosted slightly, revealing his emotions. He acknowledged Izuku as the strongest in their class, perhaps in the festival, and mentioned witnessing his impressive performance in the cavalry battle. However, he was not there to praise Izuku, he was there to declare his intention to surpass him. Izuku's smirk sharpened, his eyes glinting with challenge. He dismissed Todoroki's bold words, questioning whether his ice and fire could truly eclipse the sun. He urged Todoroki to prove it. Todoroki stepped closer, undeterred, and explained that this was not just about power but personal stakes. He revealed that his father, Endeavor, expected him to be a perfect weapon, surpassing All Might using only his fire. He rejected that expectation and declared his intention to win the tournament using only his ice, to spite his father. He paused, lowering his voice to express that Izuku challenged not just him but everything Endeavor stood for. He questioned Izuku's motivations, recognizing the power he wielded. Izuku's gaze bore into Todoroki, the room warming further as his pride surged. Izuku Midoriya, the lion's sin of pride, chosen by the sun itself, had a singular drive, to be unmatched, to protect those under his care, and to forge a legacy that burned eternal. He believed that his father's ambitions and All Might's legacy were fleeting sparks compared to his own flame. He challenged Todoroki to cast aside his doubts and embrace his full power, warning that without doing so, he would never be able to touch him. Todoroki's eyes widened, a flicker of fire igniting in his left pupil. He acknowledged that he had been holding back but declared that he would not use his father's fire to defeat Izuku. He aimed to prove that he was not a puppet, and when he succeeded, Izuku would see he was more than just a shadow. Izuku welcomed the challenge, laughing with a low, resonant sound that filled the room. He proclaimed that the lion bows to no one, not even a storm, and urged Todoroki to bring his best or risk being consumed by his flame. With that, he turned and strode out, leaving Todoroki in a haze of heat and resolve, the air crackling with their unspoken rivalry. The stadium erupted in noise as Izuku stepped into the arena, the crowd's cheers crashing over him like a tidal wave. The concrete ring was surrounded by raised stands filled to capacity, with cameras flashing like stars. Across from him stood Itsuka Kendo, her orange hair tied back, her stance confident yet cautious. Her hands were already enlarged, fists the size of boulders, and her eyes were sharp with tactical focus. The board above displayed their names. Midoriya versus Kendo. Round present mix voice boomed through the arena, announcing the first match of the one-on-one tournament. He introduced Izuku Midoriya, the million-point marvel, and Itsuka Kendo, Class 1BS strategic powerhouse, declaring it would be an exciting battle. Aizawa, however, sighed and rubbed his temples, counting mix outbursts and warning him to stop. He acknowledged Midoriya's unmatched raw power but noted that Kendo's big fist quirk and quick thinking made her a wild card. If she outsmarted him, she could extend the match. Mike laughed, excitedly predicting that Kendo's giant fists would clash against Midoriya's fiery prowess. Midnight raised her whip, outlining the rules. No weapons, no leaving the ring, and no lethal moves. She urged them to fight with honor, warning that any violations would result in detention. Kendo moved first, her enlarged fists swinging in a devastating arc as she declared she wouldn't hold back. The ground trembled as her fists slammed down, aiming to pin Izuku against the arena's edge. Izuku dodged with fluid grace, his body a blur of heat and muscle, responding that he would be insulted if she did hold back. He ducked under her next swing, feeling the air whistle as her fist grazed his hair. He noted her speed and decided to test her resolve. He lunged, aiming a palm strike at her midsection, heat pulsing from his hand. Kendo twisted, blocking with her enlarged hand, the impact sending a shockwave through the arena. She asserted her strength, declaring she was not just brawn as she pivoted to slam both fists down like hammers. Izuku leaped back, the concrete cracking where he had stood, dust rising in clouds. Kendo grinned despite the stakes, acknowledging his dodge and insisting he couldn't run forever. Izuku countered, his grin fierce as he charged, heat flaring around him. He slid under her next strike, popping up behind her and challenging her to keep up. He unleashed a controlled heat wave, pushing her back without burning her, her hair fluttering in the hot gust. The crowd roared, captivated by the display of power and precision. Mike exclaimed that Kendo was holding her own, while Aizawa noted that Midoriya was testing her limits. Kendo, panting slightly, accused him of toying with her as she prepared a rapid flurry of punches. Izuku weaved through the barrage, his movements almost leisurely, and caught her wrist mid-swing, his grip firm yet gentle. He acknowledged her strength but declared it wasn't enough. Kendo gritted her teeth, realizing she needed to outsmart him. She feinted a left punch and swung her right fist low to trip him. Izuku leaped, flipping over her fist and landing with a thud that sent a pulse of heat through the arena. He praised her cleverness, asserting that the sun didn't fall easily. She charged again, creating a smokescreen of dust with a ground-shaking punch, challenging him to dodge what he couldn't see. Izuku's senses, honed by his pride and power, caught her movement. He sidestepped, grabbing her arm and using her momentum to spin her toward the ring's edge. She caught herself just before crossing the line, her fists shrinking as she steadied her breathing. Mike nearly toppled his chair, excitedly commenting on Kendo's efforts and Midoriya's sharp instincts. Aizawa noted that while Kendo's strategy was solid, Midoriya's instincts were sharper, and she was running out of options. Kendo, sweat beading on her forehead, grinned defiantly and declared she wasn't done yet. She enlarged both fists to their maximum size and slammed them together, creating a shockwave that rattled the arena. Izuku braced himself, heat flaring to disperse the force, giving Kendo a moment to reposition and circle him like a predator. Izuku acknowledged her spirit but warned that spirit alone wouldn't douse his flame. He raised a hand, forming a small, controlled sun above his palm, radiating intense heat. He hurled it at the ground between them, creating a barrier of scorching air that forced her back. Kendo shielded her face, her fists shrinking to avoid overheating, laughing despite herself as she compared him to a volcano. Izuku replied that a volcano bows to the sun as he advanced through the heat haze, his presence overwhelming. He closed the distance, dodging her desperate punch and grabbing both her wrists, his grip firm but not cruel. He commended her for fighting well but declared it was time to end the match. With a surge of strength, he spun her, gently but firmly pushing her toward the ring's edge. She stumbled, her foot crossing the line just as she tried to catch herself. Midnight declared her out, her whip cracking to signal the end of the match. Izuku Midoriya had just triumphed over Itsuka Kendo, advancing to the next round of the tournament. The crowd erupted in cheers, a wave of excitement washing over the arena. Kendo, panting, straightened up and nodded respectfully at Izuku, acknowledging his skill. She admitted that he was on another level, having given it her all. Izuku returned the nod, his pride evident but tempered with humility. He praised Kendo for her undeniable strength and encouraged her to keep shining brightly. They shook hands, and despite her loss, Kendo's grin was genuine. The atmosphere was electric as Present Mike announced the match, his voice filled with enthusiasm. He highlighted Izuku's impressive performance, noting how he had dominated the fight with style. Aizawa, observing from the sidelines, pointed out that Izuku had controlled the match from beginning to end, emphasizing the challenge he posed to the other competitors. As Izuku left the arena, the cheers of the crowd followed him, a mixture of admiration and anticipation. He felt the weight of the eyes upon him, pro-heroes, students, and rivals like Todoroki and Bakugo, all watching closely. His pride swelled, but he remained grounded, aware that the battles ahead would test him even further. He resolved to face whatever challenges lay ahead, feeling a sense of determination. The UA Sports Festival arena pulsed with energy, the crowd's roars echoing through the packed stands. The first round of the one-on-one tournament had set the stage ablaze, and now the second match was about to begin. The massive screen displayed the names: Ijiro Kiroshima vs. Tetsu. The air crackled with anticipation, the ground still marked by previous battles, remnants of melted concrete and scattered debris serving as a testament to the day's intensity. Class 1A and 1B gathered in the stands, their eyes fixed on the arena where two determined fighters were about to clash. Midnight stepped into the center of the ring, her whip snapping to silence the murmurs. She announced the start of the second round, introducing Ijiro Kiroshima from Class 1A, the hardening hero, and Tetsu from Class 1B, the steel juggernaut. She laid down the rules: no weapons, no stepping out of bounds, and no cheap shots, urging them to keep it fierce and fair. Present Mick's voice boomed from the commentary booth, expressing his excitement for the upcoming slugfest. He highlighted the endurance aspect of the match, noting that both fighters had similar quirks: Kiroshima's hardening and Tetsu's steel. Aizawa, observing closely, noted that it was less about strategy and more about who could withstand the most punishment. As the match began, Kiroshima and Tetsu faced off, their stances reflecting raw determination. Kiroshima's red hair shone under the stadium lights as his skin transformed into a jagged, rocky texture. Tetsu's gray hair glimmered as he turned into gleaming steel, both fighters grinning at each other with competitive spirit. Kiroshima charged forward, ready to show his toughness. The crowd erupted as their fists collided, creating a thunderous sound that echoed throughout the arena. Sparks flew from the impact, and Kiroshima roared with excitement, swinging again as Tetsu dodged and countered with a swift jab. The two exchanged powerful punches, each hit resonating like a hammer striking an anvil. In the stands, Denki Kaminari leaned forward, captivated by the spectacle. Momo Yaoyorozu analyzed the fight, recognizing the similarities in their quirks but noting Tetsu's potential edge in density. Mina Ashido cheered for Kiroshima, urging him to show his strength, while Siro compared the match to a slow-motion crash of trucks. In the Class 1B section, Itsuka Kendo watched intently, confident in Tetsu's training and strength. Nito Monoma, lounging nearby, expressed his belief that Tetsu would win, dismissing Class 1A's reputation. Pony Tsunatori encouraged everyone to appreciate the fight, recognizing the skills of both competitors. Back in the arena, Kiroshima ducked a powerful swing from Tetsu and retaliated with an uppercut that connected solidly. He taunted Tetsu, claiming he was just getting started. Tetsu laughed off the blow and charged, tackling Kiroshima to the ground. They grappled fiercely, each trying to gain the upper hand, their quirks making them formidable opponents. Present Mike, filled with excitement, compared their struggle to two rhinos clashing. Aizawa, maintaining his composure, noted that while they were evenly matched, Kiroshima's stamina might give him a slight advantage. The crowd leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding battle as Kiroshima broke free and landed a solid kick to Tetsu's side. Tetsu skidded back but remained undeterred, ready to continue the fight. The redhead staggered, his hardening absorbing the blow, but his breath hitched. Ochako Uraraka cheered, gripping the railing, encouraging Kiroshima to show his spirit. Kyoka Jiro noted Kiroshima's manliness but recognized that Tetsu was not giving an inch, making it clear that the outcome could go either way. Izuku Midoriya, seated nearby, observed with keen interest, noting that Kiroshima was fighting with heart, but Tetsu's resolve was equally fierce. It was a battle of wills as much as quirks. Tetsu feinted left, then swung right, catching Kiroshima's arm. He twisted to throw Kiroshima toward the ring's edge, but Kiroshima planted his feet, his hardening deepening and pushed back, their locked arms trembling with effort. Kiroshima grunted, his muscles straining as he shoved Tetsu back, declaring that he wouldn't go down easily. He broke free and landed a double-fisted strike that sent Tetsu stumbling, the sound echoing like a bell. The UA Sports Festival arena thrummed with restless energy, the crowd's anticipation palpable as the third round of the one-on-one tournament loomed. The scars of previous battles cracked concrete, scorched patches, and scattered debris marked the ring like a battle-worn canvas. The massive screen above flashed the next matchup, Yuga Aoyama vs Hitoshi Shinszo. The stands, filled with spectators, buzzed with speculation, while the students of Class 1A and 1B watched silently from their respective sections, their eyes fixed on the arena below. No words passed among them, but their gazes, some curious, others tense, spoke volumes. Aoyama, the sparkling showman of 1A, faced Shinszo, the enigmatic general studies student whose declaration of war had left an impression. The air felt heavy, charged with an unseen psychological current. Midnight strode to the center of the ring, her whip snapping sharply, commanding silence. Her voice echoed through the stadium, announcing the beginning of the third round. Aoyama from Class 1A, the dazzling hero with a laser that shines brighter than the stars, was set to face Shinszo from Class 1C, the wild card with a mysterious edge. The rules were clear: no weapons, no stepping out of bounds, and no dirty tricks. It was time to fight with flair and honor. In the commentary booth, Present Mike leaned forward, his voice vibrant yet slightly restrained. He expressed excitement about Aoyama's flashy quirk but acknowledged that Shinszo had something unpredictable about him. Aizawa, visibly exhausted, cautioned Mike about his enthusiasm, noting that Aoyama's quirk had high output but low endurance, while Shinszo's unpredictability could turn the tide. On the arena floor, both students stood in their standard UA gym uniforms, the green and white fabric catching the stadium lights. Aoyama's blonde hair gleamed as he struck a theatrical pose, one hand on his hip, the other raised as if to salute the crowd. His navel glowed faintly, signaling the power of his laser. He declared that his naval laser would eclipse Shinszo's ambitions. Shinszo, standing opposite, presented a stark contrast with his wild purple hair framing a calm, almost bored expression. His hands were in his pockets, his stance relaxed yet deceptive. He remarked on Aoyama's flashy demeanor, questioning whether he could back up his big talk. Aoyama's smile widened, undeterred by Shinszo's taunts. He assured Shinszo of his unmatched brilliance and fired a beam of light from his navel, a shimmering lance of energy that cut through the air toward Shinszo. The crowd gasped as the beam's radiance cast fleeting rainbows across the arena. Shinszo sidestepped effortlessly, the laser grazing past him and scorching a line into the concrete. He acknowledged Aoyama's effort but challenged him to try again. The Class 1A section watched intently, their silence heavy with focus. Aoyama twirled and fired another laser, sweeping it in a wide arc, declaring that Shinszo could not escape his eclat. The beam forced Shinszo to duck and roll, smudging his gym uniform with dust as he sprang back to his feet. Shinszo brushed off his sleeve, narrowing his eyes as he commented on Aoyama's apparent vanity. He questioned Aoyama's motivations for wanting to be a hero, suggesting that he was more interested in looking pretty than in the true essence of heroism. Aoyama froze for a moment, his smile faltering, but he quickly recovered, insisting that he shone to inspire others. As Aoyama unleashed a rapid burst of smaller lasers, each one precise and aimed to hem Shinszo in, Shinszo dodged with a dancer's grace. He taunted Aoyama, suggesting that he was trying to convince himself of his own worth. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Aoyama's lasers were relentless, but Shinszo's words seemed to strike deeper, causing Aoyama's next shot to go slightly wide. Frustrated, Aoyama declared that his radiance was his purpose, insisting that Shinszo could not understand. Shinszo smirked, asserting that Aoyama was afraid of fading into the background, always posing and sparkling. He pressed closer, questioning what would remain of Aoyama without the glitter. Aoyama's eyes widened, his posture stiffening as he shouted for silence. His navel glowed brighter, the air humming as he unleashed a massive laser, the widest yet, a blinding wave of light aimed at Shinszo. The crowd leaned forward, gasps rippling through the stands as the beam surged forward. Shinszo dove, rolling under the laser, the heat grazing his back. He rose unflinched, calmly acknowledging Aoyama's shot while pressing him to confront his fears. Aoyama, now desperate, fired again, a rapid volley of beams, each one faster and more frantic, declaring that he was a hero and that his light would guide the world. The lasers crisscrossed the arena, forcing Shinszo to leap and dodge, his movements precise but increasingly strained. Mick's voice broke the tension, noting the intensity of Aoyama's attack. Those lasers were relentless. Shinszo dodged expertly, but the question lingered: how long could he maintain this pace? Aizawa observed the match closely, noting the tension in the air. Shinszo was playing a different game, and Aoyama was letting his emotions get the better of him. That was a dangerous path. The silent stands of classes 1A and 1B mirrored the intensity of the arena. Ochako Uraraka clenched her hands, her gaze darting to Aoyama's strained expression. Katsuki Bakugo's scowl deepened, sensing Aoyama's wavering focus. In Class 1B, Tetsu tightened his fists, recognizing Shinszo's calculated calm, while Nito Monoma's smirk widened, though he remained silent, a rare concession. Aoyama advanced, unleashing a dazzling barrage of lasers, each shot becoming more erratic as Shinszo's words dug deeper. He declared that no one could outshine him with taunts, his voice tinged with desperation. Spinning, he fired a spiraling beam that lit up the arena like a starburst, forcing Shinszo to dive behind a chunk of broken concrete. He proclaimed that his brilliance was eternal. Shinszo emerged from cover, his voice steady and cutting. He questioned Aoyama's confidence, suggesting that his light was merely a mask. He stepped closer, locking eyes with Aoyama, unyielding, and challenged him to admit his fear of being forgotten. Aoyama's breath hitched, his laser faltering momentarily, the glow dimming. He stammered that Shinszo knew nothing, but his usual flare was cracking. He fired again, but the beam was weaker, grazing Shinszo's shoulder and leaving a faint scorch mark. The purple-haired teen remained unfazed, his expression unchanged. Shinszo's voice was almost gentle, yet laced with steel as he pointed out that Aoyama was fighting to prove something without knowing what it was. He questioned the purpose of Aoyama's flashy display if he didn't believe in it. Aoyama's confidence twisted, and he shouted that he believed in his light. His navel glowed fiercely, the strain evident in his trembling frame. He unleashed a massive laser, the brightest yet, a blinding torrent aimed straight at Shinszo. The crowd held its breath, certain this was the end. Shinszo stood still, his eyes unwavering. He asked Aoyama if he truly believed, his voice cutting through the roar of the laser. The beam halted inches from him, Aoyama's hands shaking as pain shot through his abdomen, his quirk reaching its limit. Shinszo's voice dropped to a whisper, urging Aoyama to reveal the pain he was hiding. Aoyama's eyes widened, his mouth opening to retort, but his voice caught as Shinszo's quirk took hold. The laser fizzled, and Aoyama froze, his expression blank, his body slackening. Shinszo instructed him to walk out of the ring, his tone eerily calm. Aoyama turned, his movements mechanical, stepping over the boundary line, his gym uniform scuffed and singed. The crowd gasped, a stunned silence falling before erupting into shocked murmurs. Class 1, as students stared wide-eyed, disbelief heavy in the air. Class 1B's gazes were equally stunned, though a flicker of pride crossed Kendo's face, tempered by surprise at Shinszo's strategy. Midnight declared the outcome, her whip cracking as she announced that Yuga Aoyama had left the ring and Hitoshi Shinszo advanced to the next round. The stadium erupted into chaos, cheers and gasps mingling as Shinszo stood, his expression unchanged, his purple hair ruffling in the breeze. Aoyama blinked, awareness returning, and he stumbled, clutching his stomach, confusion and defeat etched on his face. Shinszo glanced at him, his tone neutral but not unkind, acknowledging Aoyama's effort while suggesting he needed to work on his focus. He turned and walked off the arena, leaving Aoyama to process his loss. Present Mick's voice shattered the stunned silence, his shock genuine as he remarked on Shinszo's unexpected victory. Aizawa leaned back, his voice low as he noted that Shinszo had played the long game, baiting Aoyama into revealing his vulnerabilities. The stands remained silent as both classes processed the upset. Aoyama trudged back to his classmates, his head low, while Shinszo returned to Class 1C, his calm facade hiding a flicker of satisfaction. The crowd's roar faded to a hum, the arena charged with the promise of more surprises as the tournament's stakes grew ever higher. The UA Sports Festival arena pulsed with frenetic energy, the crowd's cheers filling every corner of the stadium. The third round had left spectators reeling, Shinszo's psychological victory over Aoyama a stark reminder of the tournament's unpredictability. Now, the fourth round loomed, the massive screen above the field blazing with the names. Momo Yaoyorozu vs Mina Ishido. The stands buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of scorched concrete and lingering tension from prior battles. Class 1A and 1B sat in their sections, their focus unwavering as they prepared for the clash of two of one, as brightest. Midnight strutted to the center, her whip cracking to command attention. Her voice, rich with allure and authority, echoed through the stands as she announced the fourth round. Momo Yaoyorozu from Class 1A, the creation genius with an intellect sharper than a blade, would face Mina Ishido, one, as acid-wielding dynamo known for her unpredictability. The rules were clear. No weapons except those created with their quirks, no stepping out of bounds, and no underhanded moves. The fight was to be filled with passion and pride. In the commentary booth, Present Mike leaned into his microphone, his enthusiasm barely contained as he anticipated the showdown. Aizawa, slouched beside him, sighed heavily, noting the intensity of the match ahead. Yaoyorozu's creation quirk offered endless options, but she needed time to execute them. Ishido's agility and acid made her a formidable opponent at any range, testing Yaoyorozu's adaptability. On the arena floor, Momo and Mina faced off, their UA gym uniforms slightly rumpled from the day's intensity. Momo stood tall, her dark hair pulled into a high ponytail, her expression calm yet sharp with calculation. Her hands glowed faintly as her creation quirk primed. Mina, opposite her, bounced on her toes, her pink skin gleaming under the stadium lights, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she flexed her hands, a thin sheen of acid glistening on her palms. Momo smiled calmly, her tone measured as she addressed Mina's enthusiasm. She admired her friend's spirit but was determined to create a strategy that would keep her grounded. The contest would be worthy of their skills. Mina grinned, her excitement evident as she darted forward, her movements fluid and unpredictable. She flung a spray of low-potency acid in a wide arc, the liquid hissing as it hit the concrete and creating slick patches that shimmered ominously. Momo sidestepped with honed reflexes, raising her arm as a metal shield materialized from her forearm. The acid splashed harmlessly against it, sizzling but leaving no mark. Momo acknowledged Mina's bold opening, stating that she was prepared for the challenge. She pivoted, conjuring a bow staff that gleamed in the light, swinging it in a precise arc to push Mina back and gain some space. Mina cartwheeled away, her agility almost balletic, laughing as she complimented Momo on her weapon. She clapped her hands, releasing a burst of thicker acid that arced toward Momo like a liquid whip, challenging her to dodge it. Momo's eyes narrowed as she dropped the staff, conjuring a pair of insulated boots that she slipped on effortlessly. The acid splashed around her, hissing against the concrete but sliding off her protected soles. Momo acknowledged Mina's cleverness and advanced, confident in her understanding of Mina's quirk and its limitations. Mina's grin remained unwavering as she crouched, pressing her hands to the ground. A pool of acid spread outward, more viscous than before, creating a treacherous moat around her. She taunted Momo, daring her to come closer. The crowd leaned forward, murmurs rippling through the stands as the arena transformed into a battlefield of strategy and spontaneity. Class 1A watched intently, with Ochako Uraraka's hands clasped tightly and Izuku Midoriya observing the contrasting styles of Momo's calculated moves and Mina's wild improvisation. Class 1B students were equally engrossed, Itsuka Kendo noting Mina's unorthodox approach. Momo assessed the acid pool, her mind racing with calculations. She recognized Mina's barrier tactic as bold but counterable. Her arm glowed as she materialized a grappling hook launcher, firing it over the acid and embedding it into debris at the arena's edge. With a tug, she swung herself across, landing cleanly on the other side, her boots shielding her from stray splashes. Momo acknowledged Mina's strength but asserted her ability to navigate the hazardous terrain. Mina's eyes sparkled with delight as she prepared for her next move. She spun, flinging a series of denser acid globs aimed to keep Momo on her toes. The globs splattered across the arena, creating sizzling hazards that forced Momo to weave and dodge, her shield raised to deflect the worst of it. Momo's breath quickened, but her focus remained unbroken as she respected Mina's ability to force her to adapt. She conjured a lightweight net, tossing it toward Mina in an attempt to entangle her. Mina dove under the net, sliding across her own acid with practiced ease. She retaliated with a high-pressure acid spray aimed at Momo's legs, seeking to disrupt her footing. Momo leaped, conjuring thin stilts that elevated her above the spray. She balanced expertly, acknowledging Mina's impressive improvisation while asserting her own planning. Dismantling the stilts, she landed lightly and conjured a small cannon, firing a rubber projectile aimed to push Mina toward the ring's edge. Mina ducked the projectile, which thudded against the arena wall. She expressed her awe and defiance, clapping her hands to release a cloud of acidic mist that obscured her movements. The crowd gasped as the mist swirled, hiding Mina's form. The commentator noted that Mina's tricks were unprecedented, while Aizawa observed that Mina's improvisation was forcing Momo to rethink her approach, though he believed Momo's intellect would give her the edge. Momo stood still, her senses straining as she recognized the smokescreen. She acknowledged Mina's cleverness but remained confident in her abilities. Conjuring a handheld fan, she activated it to disperse the mist. As the haze cleared, Mina lunged, her hands coated in a sticky acid aimed to grab Momo's shield. Momo twisted, allowing the shield to dissolve, and conjured a pair of insulated gloves to protect herself. She grabbed Mina's wrists, asserting that she was not out of options. Pushing Mina back, she conjured a spring-loaded net launcher, firing it to trap Mina against the ground. Mina rolled, narrowly avoiding the net, and sprang up, her breath heaving but her grin fierce. She expressed her enjoyment of the match and spun, flinging a spiral of acid in a wide arc, a spontaneous move that curved toward Momo's flank. Momo's eyes widened as she conjured a reinforced umbrella, its canopy deflecting the acid. She praised Mina's creativity while advancing through the sizzling droplets. Conjuring a neutralizing powder, she scattered it to dull Mina's acid patches, creating safe footing as she prepared to close the distance. Mina's eyes widened as she backpedaled, attempting another untested move by clapping her hands to create a burst of acid bubbles aimed to disorient Momo. Momo ducked, her reflexes sharp, and conjured a gas mask to shield herself from the fumes. She acknowledged Mina's innovation but declared her intent to end the match. Charging forward, she produced a pair of bolas and hurled them at Mina's legs, successfully tripping her. Mina hit the ground, her acid sizzling harmlessly against the concrete. Momo asserted her victory, gently pinning Mina with a long pole to prevent her from rising. She calmly declared that Mina should yield. Mina had fought brilliantly. Despite her acid eating away at the pole, Momo conjured a second one, reinforced with a non-corrosive alloy. Mina laughed, her voice breathless but genuine, acknowledging Momo's victory. She expressed her admiration for Momo's intelligence, admitting that it had been an exhilarating match. Midnight declared the match concluded, announcing that Mina Ishido was pinned and had yielded, allowing Momo Yaoyorozu to advance to the next round. The crowd erupted into cheers, filling the stadium with excitement. Mina rolled to her feet, brushing off her uniform, and grinned at Momo, praising her tenacity. Momo smiled back, her composure softening as she acknowledged Mina's extraordinary improvisation and expressed her honor in facing her. They shared a quick, playful hug that elicited a surprised laugh from Momo. The commentator, Mike, expressed his awe at the fight, noting Mina's whirlwind of moves and Momo's strategic brilliance. Aizawa, observing from the sidelines, remarked on the match's outcome, highlighting Momo's preparation and adaptability as the deciding factors. The stands were silent as Class 1A and 1B absorbed the intensity of the battle. Ochako's eyes shone with pride for both competitors, while Izuku nodded, impressed by Momo's precision and Mina's creativity. Kendo regarded Mina with a flicker of respect. The arena vibrated with the crowd's energy, setting the stage for the upcoming battles, each clash raising the stakes higher. The UA Sports Festival arena buzzed with fervor, the crowd's cheers resonating through the packed stands. Momo Yaoyorozu's calculated victory over Mina Ishido had left the audience breathless, and now the fifth round was about to begin. The massive screen above the arena displayed the names, Denki, Kaminari vs. Ibara Shiozaki. The field bore the marks of previous battles, pitted concrete and scattered rubble, each scar a testament to grit and glory. Class 1A and 1B sat in anticipation, their eyes fixed on the ring where a clash of electricity and vines was about to unfold. Midnight strode to the center, her whip slicing the air with a sharp crack, silencing the murmurs. Her voice, a blend of authority and excitement, echoed across the stadium as she introduced the competitors. Denki Kaminari from Class 1A, known for his electrifying quirk, would face Ibara Shiozaki from Class 1B, the serene Vine Maiden. She reminded them of the rules: no weapons except their quirks, no stepping out of bounds, and to fight with honor and zeal. In the commentary booth, Present Mike leaned forward, expressing his enthusiasm for the match. Aizawa, visibly weary, offered a dry assessment of the competitors, noting Kaminari's powerful but erratic quirk and Shiozaki's precise control over her vines. On the arena floor, Kaminari and Shiozaki faced off in their UA gym uniforms. Kaminari's blonde hair glinted under the lights, his grin wide but his eyes sharp with focus. Shiozaki stood opposite, her green hair flowing like a cascade of leaves, her expression serene yet resolute, with vines coiling subtly at her feet. Kaminari initiated the banter, playfully taunting Shiozaki while bouncing on his toes, daring her to make the first move. Shiozaki responded with calm determination, raising her hands as vines erupted from the ground, surging toward him like a living wave. Kaminari dodged with surprising agility, sparks dancing at his fingertips as he sidestepped the vines. He quipped about their appearance, releasing a low-voltage pulse that singed the tips of the vines but did not break them. The crowd leaned forward, captivated by his unexpected focus and agility. Shiozaki maintained her composure, her determination evident as she split her vines to corner Kaminari against the boundary. She declared that her faith guided her vines, which would not falter. Kaminari cartwheeled away, his grin unwavering as he calculated his next move. He feigned a stumble, letting a vine graze his arm, drawing gasps from the crowd. He released another pulse, stronger this time, scorching a cluster of vines. Shizuki tightened her lips, gesturing for new vines to sprout, thicker and more aggressive. She probed Kaminari's motivations for fighting, questioning whether it was for glory, pride, or mere whimsy. Kaminari laughed off her inquiries, dodging another tendril while keeping his eyes on the ring's edge, calculating distances. He released a burst of electricity at the ground, kicking up dust to obscure his movements, declaring that her vines were giving him a workout. The dust cloud swirled, and Shizuki's vines hesitated as she sensed the trick. The arena pulsed with anticipation, the outcome of the match hanging in the balance as both competitors prepared for the next move. She declared that no one could escape judgment as she unleashed a wave of vines through the dust, their thorns glinting menacingly, aiming to sweep Kaminari out of bounds. The crowd held its breath, certain the vines would find their target. Kaminari emerged from the dust, rolling to the side, his grin unwavering. He remarked that judgment sounded heavy, his voice light but his movements precise. He fired a targeted jolt, electricity arcing to a cluster of vines, reducing them to brittle husks. He suggested they lighten the mood and darted forward, staying just out of reach, his feigned clumsiness masking a calculated path toward the center of the ring. Nick's voice broke through, filled with surprise as he noted Kaminari's impressive dodging skills. The vines were everywhere, yet he slipped through them with ease, making one wonder if he was actually thinking strategically. Aizawa narrowed his eyes, his tone dry as he observed that Kaminari was playing dumb but had a plan. Shizuki's vines were dominant, yet she was overextending and Kaminari was baiting her. Shizuki's vines surged again, forming a cage-like structure, their thorns gleaming as they closed in. She stated that Kaminari's antics wouldn't save him and urged him to surrender to the embrace of her vines for a clean end. The vines tightened, aiming to trap Kaminari and drag him over the boundary line. Kaminari's grin widened, mischief sparkling in his eyes as he declared that the embrace sounded cozy, but he preferred to be a free spirit. He leaped, twisting midair to avoid the vines, landing closer to the ring's edge than was safe. The crowd gasped, thinking he had miscalculated, but Kaminari winked at Shizuki, teasing that she thought she had him. He released a low, controlled shockwave, the electricity spreading across the ground, singeing the base of her vines and forcing them to retract slightly. Shizuki's brow furrowed, her composure cracking as she expressed frustration at his mockery of the contest. She questioned whether he took it seriously and lashed out with her vines, now moving faster, a thorny whip aiming for Kaminari's legs in an attempt to trip him out of bounds. Kaminari stumbled again, deliberately allowing the vine to graze his ankle, drawing another gasp from the crowd. He exaggeratedly claimed to be super serious, rolling away with fluid movements despite the feigned panic. He fired a pinpoint jolt at the vine's root, charring it and declaring he was just having fun while at it. His eyes flicked to the boundary, his mind mapping the arena's layout, knowing he was almost there. The UA Sports Festival arena thrummed with a vibrant pulse, the crowd's cheers a tidal wave surging through the packed stands, their excitement a living force under the blazing stadium lights. The fifth round had left the audience reeling, Denki Kaminari's cunning victory over Ibara Shizuki a dazzling upset that proved brains could outshine brawn. Now, the sixth round loomed, the massive screen above the scarred battlefield flashing the names. Tenya Ida versus Mei Hatsum. The arena bore the marks of prior clashes, cracked concrete, charred streaks, and scattered debris, each scar a testament to the festival's ferocity. Class 1A and 1B sat in their sections, their silence heavy with curiosity, eyes fixed on the ring where a clash of speed and ingenuity was about to unfold. The air buzzed with anticipation, laced with a peculiar energy, as if the arena itself sensed the comedic chaos brewing. Midnight strutted to the center, her whip slicing the air with a sharp crack, commanding instant attention. Her voice, a sultry blend of authority and mischief, echoed through the stadium as she announced that Round 6 was here and promised a wild ride. Tenya Ida from Class 1A, the speedster with engines that roared like a storm, would face Mei Hatsum from Class 1H, the support course genius whose inventions stole the spotlight. She reminded them that no weapons were allowed except for their quirks or approved gear, and there would be no stepping out of bounds or sneaky tricks. She urged them to fight with passion and flair and declared the match to begin. In the commentary booth, Present Mike leaned into his microphone, his enthusiasm barely contained as he expressed excitement about the upcoming match. He noted that Ida was all about speed and DSPN, while Hatsum had gadgets galore. Aizawa, slouched beside him, groaned audibly, mentioning Mick's numerous outbursts and suggesting he might draft a resignation letter. He observed that Ida's engine quirk made him a bullet, but Hatsum was there to show off rather than win, predicting that it could turn into a circus. On the arena floor, Ida and Mei faced off in their blue and white UA gym uniforms, the fabric catching the stadium's glow. Ida stood rigid, his posture impeccable, glasses gleaming as he adjusted them with a precise flick. His legs hummed faintly, the engines in his calves primed for action, his expression a mask of disciplined resolve. Mei, opposite him, was a whirlwind of energy, her pink dreadlocks bouncing, her goggles reflecting the lights with a manic gleam. Her uniform was barely visible beneath a chaotic array of gadgets: hover saws, wire launchers, a hydraulic arm brace, and something suspiciously like a jetpack strapped to her back. She bounced on her heels, grinning ear to ear, her eyes locked not on Ida but on the VIP section where business tycoons from support companies watched. She exclaimed that Ida was the perfect canvas for her inventions and expressed her desire to give the investors a show they would never forget. She patted her jetpack, which sputtered comically, emitting a puff of smoke that made her cough but didn't dim her enthusiasm. Ida's brow furrowed as he formally stated that this was a tournament, not a product showcase, and that he intended to compete with honor and secure victory through his own merits. He chopped the air, his engines revving slightly, ready to bolt. Mei waved a hand dismissively, already tinkering with a wrist-mounted device. She declared that honor was irrelevant, emphasizing that they were a marketing dream together. She activated her hover saws, lifting an inch off the ground, and fired a wire from her wrist, the hook snagging a chunk of debris and yanking her forward with a gleeful whoop. She proudly proclaimed that her wire arrows were top-tier and perfect for hero work. The crowd chuckled, caught off guard by Mei's theatrics, while Class 1 as section stirred with silent amusement. Izuku Midoriya, seated among his classmates, couldn't suppress a laugh, his green eyes sparkling as he watched Mei's antics. He thought about how she was just like she was with him and felt a twinge of sympathy for Ida, who had no idea what he was in for. Class 1B watched with equal interest, Tetsu grinning wide, recognizing Mei's chaotic energy from their own encounters with support corps students. Ida, unfazed by the crowd's laughter, charged forward, his engines roaring as he closed the distance in a blur. He declared that her gadgets were impressive, but speed would prevail as he aimed a controlled shoulder check to push Mei toward the ring's edge. His movements were precise, a testament to his training, his legs a whirlwind of motion. Mei yelped, her hover saws kicking in and lifting her just out of reach. She laughed, firing another wire that snagged Ida's arm, the line taut as she swung around him like a satellite. She excitedly introduced her auto-balancer. Keeps her steady no matter how fast he goes. Her jetpack sputtered again, sending her wobbling, but she landed with a dramatic flourish, striking a pose for the VIPs. Investors should note the versatility. Ida skidded to a halt, his glasses glinting with exasperation. This was a battle, not a sales pitch, he thought, charging again, his engines flaring blue as he aimed to corner Mei against the boundary. He respected her ingenuity, but he had to advance. Mei dodged, her wire launcher firing to pull her across the arena, her laughter echoing. Advance? Sure, but first try my hydraulic arm. She activated the brace on her arm, which extended with a hiss, grabbing a piece of rubble and hurling it toward Ida, not to hit him, but to block his path. See? Strength and precision. Perfect for rescue operations. She waved at the VIPs, who scribbled notes, their interest piqued. The crowd roared with laughter, Mei's antics turning the match into a spectacle. Izuku covered his mouth, his shoulders shaking as he tried to stifle his chuckles. She's turning Ida into her personal billboard, he thought, his pride mingling with amusement. He's trying so hard to stay serious. Mick's voice boomed, barely containing his glee. Hatsum's making this a gadget expo. Ida's running circles, but she's stealing the show. Eraser, you have to admit, this is hilarious. Aizawa sighed, rubbing his temples. Mike, 33. I'm begging you to stop. Hatsum's not fighting to win, she's advertising. Ida's stuck playing her game, and it's throwing him off. Ida, undeterred, adjusted his strategy, his engines revving as he zigzagged to avoid Mei's scattered debris. Her devices were remarkable, but he would not be distracted. He closed in with a burst of speed, aiming to nudge her out of bounds with a precise shove. This ends now. Mei grinned, her goggles flashing as she activated her jetpack, which roared to life with a comical sputter, lifting her just above Ida's reach. Not so fast, Speedy. Check out my aerial maneuver gear. She soared, wobbling slightly, and fired a barrage of small, non-lethal pellets from a wrist-mounted launcher, peppering the ground to keep Ida at bay. Lightweight, accurate, and market-ready, she called, winking at the VIPs. Ida ducked, his reflexes sharp, but his expression grew strained. This is highly irregular. He protested, dodging another pellet that pinged off the concrete. He charged again, his speed a blur, but Mei's hoversalls kept her just out of reach, her laughter ringing out as she swung across the arena on another wire. Miss Hatsum, please engage in combat. Ida pleaded, his voice tinged with frustration but still polite. Your inventions are impressive, but this is a tournament. Combat schmombat. Mei retorted, landing with a skid and pulling a small device from her belt, a handheld sonic emitter. Check this out. My sonic disruptor. Perfect for disorienting villains. She activated it, the device emitting a high-pitched whine that made Ida wince, his engine stuttering as he clutched his ears. The crowd gasped, then laughed, Mei's relentless showmanship winning them over. Izuku's laughter broke free, his hand slapping his knee as he watched Ida struggle to maintain his composure. She's driving him up the wall, he thought, grinning. I know exactly how that feels. The UA Sports Festival arena thrummed with a feverish intensity, the crowd's cheers a roaring tempest that shook the stands, their fervor a living pulse under the blazing stadium lights. The sixth round had left the audience in stitches, Tenya Ida's disciplined victory over Mei Hatsum's chaotic gadget showcase a comedic highlight that still drew chuckles. Now, the seventh round loomed, the massive screen above the scarred battlefield blazing with the names. Hanta Siro vs. Shoto Todoroki. The arena, a patchwork of cracked concrete, charred streaks, and scattered rubble, stood as a testament to the tournament's ferocity, each mark a story of grit and glory. Class 1A and 1B sat in their sections, their silence heavy with anticipation, eyes locked on the ring where a clash of agility and icy precision was about to unfold. The air crackled with tension, as if the stadium itself braced for a storm. Before the match, in a dimly lit corridor beneath the stands, Shoto Todoroki strode toward the prep area, his heterochromatic eyes fixed ahead, his blue and white UA gym uniform crisp despite the day's intensity. His expression was a mask of calm resolve, but a flicker of defiance burned in his gaze, a silent rebellion against the weight of his lineage. As he rounded a corner, a towering figure blocked his path. Endeavor, the number 2 hero, his flames flickering ominously, his massive frame casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the light. Shoto, Endeavor's voice boomed, a low growl laced with authority. This childish defiance ends now. You're not like the others, your power, your potential, it's beyond them. Stop rejecting my fire. Use it and claim your place as my heir. Shoto stopped, his jaw tightening, frost creeping along his right hand. I'm not your tool, he said, his voice cold and unyielding, each word a blade. I'll win this tournament with my ice, to prove I don't need your legacy. You don't control me. Endeavor's flames flared, his eyes narrowing. You're a fool to spurn what I've given you. Your classmates are ants compared to you, Midoriya, that brash spark, even Allmight's shadow. You're different, Shoto. My blood runs in you. Embrace it or you'll regret it. Shoto's left side sparked briefly, a flicker of fire he quickly suppressed, his voice steady but laced with venom. Your blood is a curse I'll overcome. I'm not fighting for you, I'm fighting for myself. Step aside, father, or I'll walk through you. He brushed past, frost trailing in his wake, leaving Endeavor seething, his flames casting jagged shadows on the wall. In the arena, Midnight strode to the center, her whip cracking like a lightning bolt, silencing the crowd's murmurs. Her voice, a sultry command tinged with excitement, echoed through the stadium. Round 7 is upon us, and it's going to be a chilling spectacle. Hanta Siro from Class 1A, the tape-slinging acrobat with a knack for sticking it out, versus Shoto Todoroki from Class 1A, the ice-wielding prodigy with a heart of frost. No weapons except Quirk-derived tools, no stepping out of bounds, and no foul play. Fight with valor and vigor. Begin. In the commentary booth, Present Mike leaned into his microphone, his voice a vibrant surge. Oh, this is going to be a cool one. Siro's tape is all about mobility, but Todoroki's ice is a game-changer. What's the vibe, Eraser? Aizawa, slouched beside him, bandages glinting, sighed heavily. Mike, you're at 36 outbursts. One more, and I'm not joking about consequences. Siro's agility is his strength, but Todoroki's ice is relentless. This is about evasion versus control. Siro's got to stay one step ahead. On the arena floor, Siro and Todoroki faced off, their blue and white gym uniforms catching the stadium's glow. Siro's lanky frame was relaxed, his grin wide but his dark eyes sharp with focus, his elbows primed to unleash his tape quirk. Todoroki stood opposite, his posture rigid, his right side already frosting, his expression a cold mask of determination, while his left side remained dormant, a silent vow to his rebellion. Siro called out, his voice light but edged with confidence, as he flexed his hands. He aimed to bind Todoroki's arm and pull him off balance with a stream of tape shot from his elbow, the adhesive ribbon arcing toward him. Todoroki didn't flinch. Instead, he swept his right hand upward, summoning a wave of ice from the ground that froze the tape midair into a brittle, crystalline strand. He acknowledged Siro's quirk as versatile but asserted that it wouldn't reach him. With a stomp, he spread a sheet of ice across the arena, slick and treacherous, aiming to limit Siro's mobility and push him toward the boundary. Siro leaped, using a chunk of debris to yank himself into the air with a fluid swing. He grinned as he swung over the ice, landing on a clear patch of concrete. He fired twin streams of tape, one aiming for Todoroki's legs and the other looping toward his shoulders, attempting to trap him. The crowd leaned forward, murmurs rippling through the stands as Siro's agility defied the ice. Class 1A watched in tense silence, with Ochako Uraraka's hands clasped, noting Siro's nimble grace. Class 1B's students were equally engrossed, Itsuka Kendo narrowing her eyes as she tracked Todoroki's calculated restraint. Izuku Midoriya, seated among 1A, chuckled softly, his green eyes glinting with respect for Siro's tenacity, aware of the challenge of facing Todoroki's frost. Todoroki raised his hand, a wall of ice erupting to block the tape, the ribbons sticking to the frozen surface but failing to reach him. He noted Siro's speed and asserted that it alone wouldn't win the match. He sent a jagged spike of ice arcing toward Siro, its edge glinting, aimed to force him back toward the ring's edge. Siro swung again, his tape latching onto a lighting rig above the arena, pulling him high above the ice. He quipped about his quickness while firing another stream of tape, this time aiming to loop around Todoroki's waist and yank him forward. Todoroki sidestepped, his ice encasing the tape and freezing it solid before it could wrap him. He acknowledged Siro's persistence but stated that it wouldn't break his resolve. A broader wave of ice surged from him, the frost spreading in a crescent and narrowing Siro's landing options. Siro landed, skidding on the slick ice but catching himself with a tape anchor to the ground. He laughed, comparing Todoroki's resolve to that of Ida. He shot multiple tape streams, creating a web-like pattern across the arena, aiming to restrict Todoroki's movements. Todoroki's eyes narrowed as he stomped to create a massive ice pillar, shattering Siro's web as it rose, its surface glistening under the lights. He slid forward on his own ice, closing the distance and aiming to push Siro toward the boundary with a controlled ice wall. Siro's grin widened, undeterred by Todoroki's advance. He swung upward again, his tape latching onto the pillar's peak, pulling him high above the arena. He fired a barrage of tape, each ribbon aimed at Todoroki's legs, trying to entangle him and disrupt his balance. Todoroki raised another ice wall, the tape sticking but failing to hold him. He remarked on Siro's creativity and sent a series of ice spikes arcing towards Siro's landing zone, forcing him to swing again to avoid them. The crowd gasped, Siro's acrobatics drawing cheers as he weaved through the icy onslaught. Izuku's chuckle grew, his hand covering his mouth as he admired Siro's relentless energy, thinking that he was turning this into a game of cat and mouse. Mick's voice boomed with excitement as he commented on Siro's agility and Todoroki's control. Aizawa's response was cut short as he smacked Mike on the back of the head, warning him to be quiet. He noted that while Siro's evasion was impressive, Todoroki's control was absolute, and he was biding his time. Siro landed, his tape anchoring to another piece of debris, grinning as he declared that Todoroki's ice was cool but his tape was stickier. He fired a rapid volley of tape, creating a crisscross pattern that forced Todoroki to pause, the ribbons forming a makeshift barrier. Todoroki's expression remained steady as he swept his right hand upward, a massive ice wave surging to freeze the tape barrier solid, its surface gleaming like glass. He advanced through the frozen web, shattering it with a stomp, asserting that Siro couldn't outlast him. He sent a low, sweeping ice sheet, aiming to slick the entire arena and limit Siro's footing. Siro leaped, his tape pulling him to the arena's edge, narrowly avoiding the ice. He declared that he was just getting started and swung low, firing tape to wrap around Todoroki's ankle, yanking hard to pull him off balance. Todoroki stumbled, but his ice surged, freezing the tape and anchoring him to the ground. He acknowledged Siro's tenacity and unleashed a towering ice wall, its jagged edge pushing Siro closer to the boundary, the frost creeping toward his feet. Siro's eyes widened, but his grin remained. He shot tape upward, latching onto the stadium's rafters, pulling himself high above the ice. He swung in a wide arc, firing tape to create a net-like structure, aiming to trap Todoroki in a web of adhesive ribbons. Todoroki's right hand glowed as a massive ice dome rose, encasing him and shattering Siro's net. He emerged from the dome, frost trailing his steps, and noted Siro's creativity while asserting that his ice was absolute. He sent a barrage of ice shards, each one precise, forcing Siro to swing frantically to avoid them, his tape straining under the onslaught. Siro landed, breath heaving, but his grin remained unbroken as he quipped about the weight of Todoroki's declaration. He fired tape to anchor himself to the ground, dodging another wave of ice. He swung again, his movements a blur, tape shooting in every direction to create a chaotic web, aiming to disorient Todoroki and buy time. The crowd roared, Siro's relentless acrobatics drawing cheers, while Class 1A and 1B watched in silent awe. Katsuki Bakugo narrowed his eyes at Siro's tenacity, and Momo Yaoyorozu nodded at his ingenuity. Izuku smiled, his respect for Siro's spirit growing. He thought about how Siro was pushing Todoroki harder than anyone expected. Todoroki advanced, his ice relentless, freezing Siro's tape midair and creating a slick path that narrowed Siro's options. He acknowledged Siro's effort, stating that it was over. With a stomp, a massive ice ridge surged towards Siro, its edge sharp and unyielding, aimed to push him out of bounds. Siro swung desperately, his tape latching onto a distant piece of rubble, but the ice was faster, catching his leg and freezing it to the ground. He exclaimed about the cold, firing tape to pull himself free, but Todoroki was relentless, sending a final wave of ice that enveloped Siro's lower half, pinning him just inches from the boundary. Midnight declared Siro immobilized and out of bounds, announcing Todoroki's advancement to the next round. The stadium erupted, cheers and gasps mingling as Todoroki stood, frost fading from his hand. His expression remained unchanged, but his eyes flickered with respect. Siro, shivering as the ice melted, grinned despite the loss, commenting on how chilly it was and acknowledging Todoroki's strength. Todoroki nodded, expressing that Siro made him work for it and complimenting his agility. He offered a hand, helping Siro to his feet, and the crowd cheered for their sportsmanship. Mick's voice boomed with awe as he remarked on the match, noting Siro's efforts against Todoroki's ice. Aizawa, sitting beside him, commented on the match dynamics, acknowledging Siro's potential despite the outcome. Mike rubbed his head, laughing nervously as he agreed to tone it down. The stands of 1A and 1B remained silent, their eyes wide with respect for both competitors. Izuku's smile widened, his pride swelling for his classmates as the crowd's roar filled the arena, setting the stage for more battles. The UA Sports Festival arena pulsed with a raw, unspoken intensity, the crowd's roars a relentless tide that surged through the packed stands. The seventh round had left the audience awestruck, Shoto Todoroki's icy dominance over Siro a chilling display of control. Now, the eighth and final match of the qualifying round loomed, the massive screen above the battlefield flashing the names. Ochako Uraraka versus Katsuki Bakugo. The arena, a tapestry of cracked concrete, frozen patches, and scattered debris, stood as a testament to the tournament's ferocity, each mark a reminder of the battles fought. Class 1A and 1B sat in their sections, their silence heavy, eyes locked on the ring where a clash of gravity and fury was about to unfold. The air thrummed with tension, as if the stadium itself held its breath for the storm to come. Midnight strode to the center, her whip slicing the air with a sharp crack, commanding focus. Her voice echoed through the stands, announcing the final qualifier. Ochako Uraraka from Class 1A, the gravity-defying strategist, faced off against Katsuki Bakugo, 1, as volatile powerhouse. She emphasized the rules: no weapons except quirk-derived effects, no stepping out of bounds, and no dishonorable moves. The fight was set to begin. In the commentary booth, Present Mike leaned forward, his voice charged with intensity as he described the matchup. Aizawa, slouched beside him, spoke with a measured tone, noting Uraraka's strategic nature and Bakugo's fierce determination. On the arena floor, Ochako and Bakugo faced off, their UA gym uniforms slightly scuffed. Ochako's determined face reflected her focus, her hands poised to manipulate gravity. Bakugo, opposite her, was a coiled spring, his expression radiating heat as he prepared for the fight. No words passed between them. Ochako moved first, activating her zero-gravity quirk to lighten her body. She leaped, floating upward, her movements fluid as she aimed to gain a height advantage. Bakugo tracked her, his palms sparking as he launched himself forward with a precise explosion, propelling himself toward her like a missile. Ochako twisted midair, making a piece of debris weightless and hurling it toward Bakugo to disrupt his trajectory. He countered with a pinpoint explosion, shattering the debris into dust, the shockwave rippling across the arena. He landed, unleashing a barrage of smaller blasts aimed to box Ochako in and force her toward the boundary. The crowd leaned forward, their silence mirroring the fighters, the only sound the crackle of Bakugo's explosions and the soft hum of Ochako's quirk. Class 1A watched with bated breath, noting Ochako's calculated movements. Class 1B's students were equally engrossed, tracking Bakugo's relentless precision. Izuku, seated among 1A, watched with a clenched jaw, recognizing the echoes of his own tactics in Ochako's approach. Ochako floated higher, making more debris weightless, creating a floating minefield of rubble around her. She propelled herself forward, using the weightless objects as shields, aiming to disorient Bakugo and push him back. Her movements were silent and deliberate, each action a calculated step to outmaneuver her opponent. Bakugo's eyes narrowed, his anger a smoldering force. He countered with a sweeping explosion, the blast scattering debris like leaves in a storm, the force pushing Ochako back midair. She caught herself, floating just above the arena, and redirected a large chunk of concrete, sending it hurtling toward Bakugo with a flick of her wrist. He dodged, his reflexes honed, and retaliated with a concentrated blast, the explosion grazing her arm and singeing her uniform. Her face remained stoic, her focus unbroken as she touched the ground, making a section of concrete weightless and flipping it upward to create a barrier. Bakugo charged through, his explosions carving a path, his silence a testament to his focus, each blast a calculated strike. His anger, fueled by the matches he had witnessed, Kiroshima's grit, Todoroki's control, Kaminari's cunning burned in his movements, driving him to prove his dominance. He unleashed a massive explosion, the shockwave shaking the arena, forcing Ochako to float higher to avoid the blast, her breath quickening as she recalculated her approach. Mick's voice cut through, measured but intense. He noted that Ochako was playing smart, using the debris like a pro, but Bakugo was relentless, his explosions precise. Aizawa's tone was steady as he observed that Bakugo's anger was not just temper, it was ambition. He had absorbed every lesson from the matches he had seen. Uraraka's strategy was solid, but Bakugo was anticipating her moves. She needed to find an edge, or he would overwhelm her. Ochako landed lightly, her fingers brushing a pile of rubble, making it weightless. She hurled the debris in a rapid volley, each piece aimed to push Bakugo toward the boundary. He countered with a series of quick blasts, shattering the rubble, his movements a blur of precision and fury. He closed the distance, his palms crackling, and unleashed a low, controlled explosion, the force aimed to knock Ochako off balance. She floated upward, avoiding the blast, and touched a large slab of concrete, sending it crashing toward Bakugo like a falling wall. He sidestepped, his explosion propelling him to the side, and retaliated with a spiraling blast, the fiery vortex aimed to trap Ochako in its pull. She twisted midair, her quirk keeping her aloft, but the heat grazed her, her uniform smoldering as she landed, her eyes narrowing with determination. The arena became a battlefield of silent strategy, Ochako's weightless debris creating a chaotic dance of floating hazards, while Bakugo's explosions carved through them, his anger a driving force that seemed to shake the ground. She floated low, touching the arena floor to make a section weightless, then flipped it upward, creating a makeshift ramp to disrupt Bakugo's footing. He leaped over it, his explosions propelling him higher, and unleashed a barrage of blasts, each one aimed to hem Ochako in, pushing her closer to the boundary. Ochako's mind raced, her strategy mirroring Izuku's calculated precision. She touched a cluster of debris, sending it spiraling around her like a shield, then propelled herself forward, aiming to flank Bakugo and push him out with a surprise attack. She made a large boulder weightless, hurling it with force, its silent arc aimed at his chest. Bakugo's eyes flashed, and he countered with a massive explosion, the blast shattering the boulder and sending a shockwave that forced Ochako to float backward, her breath hitching as she struggled to maintain control. The UA Sports Festival arena pulsed with electric fervor, the crowd's roars a seismic force that shook the stands, their anticipation a blazing current under the stadium's unrelenting lights. The qualifying rounds had carved a path of chaos and triumph, each match. Etching its mark on the scarred battlefield pitted concrete, frozen shards, and scattered rubble a testament to the warriors who had clashed. Now, the quarterfinals dawned, the massive screen above the arena flashing the randomized first matchup. Izuku Midoriya versus Tetsu. The air crackled with primal energy, as if the stadium itself braced for a collision of titanic forces. Class 1A, 1B, Mei Hatsum, and Hitoshi Shinszo sat in their sections, their silence a heavy shroud, eyes locked on the ring where a clash of radiant power and unyielding steel was about to ignite. Midnight strode to the center, her whip slicing the air with a resonant crack, commanding absolute focus. Her voice echoed through the stands, announcing the quarterfinals and the competitors. Izuku Midoriya from Class 1A, the blazing lion whose power scorches the earth, versus Tetsu from Class 1B, the steel juggernaut whose resolve is unbreakable. No weapons except quirk-derived effects, no stepping out of bounds, and no dishonorable tactics were allowed. The fight was to be with ferocity and honor. As she called for the match to begin, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. In the commentary booth, Present Mike leaned into his microphone, his voice vibrant with excitement. The quarterfinals were kicking off with a thrilling matchup. Midoriya was a walking furnace, but Tetsu's steel was tougher than a tank. Aizawa, slouched beside him, spoke with a measured tone, observing that Midoriya's power was overwhelming, but Tetsu's durability was his edge. This was a test of raw strength versus unyielding endurance. Midoriya needed to control the heat, or Tetsu could outlast him. On the arena floor, Izuku and Tetsu faced off, their blue and white UA gym uniforms catching the stadium's glow. Izuku stood tall, his glasses off, his green eyes blazing with the pride of the lion sin, the lion tattoo on his back pulsing faintly through his shirt. Heat shimmered around him, the air warping as his power radiated, his expression a mix of regal confidence and eager anticipation. Tetsu, opposite him, grinned broadly, his gray hair gleaming as his body transformed into gleaming steel, his muscles rippling with a metallic sheen. His eyes burned with excitement, his stance solid as a fortress, ready to test his mettle against the festival's brightest star. No words passed between them, only a mutual nod, a silent pact of respect. Tetsu charged first, his steel-clad fist swinging with the force of a battering ram, the air whistling as he aimed for Izuku's chest. Izuku sidestepped, his movements fluid, heat trailing him like a cloak. He raised a hand, unleashing a controlled burst of heat, not enough to burn but enough to push Tetsu back, the steel teen's boots skidding across the concrete, his grin widening as he felt the searing intensity. Tetsu laughed, his voice a resonant clang, challenging Izuku to see if he could melt him. He lunged again, his fists a blur of steel, each punch a calculated strike to test Izuku's defenses. The crowd leaned forward, their silence broken by gasps as the arena shook with the impact, sparks flying where steel met heat. Izuku dodged, his body a blur, and countered with a palm strike, heat pulsing from his hand, the air shimmering as it grazed Tetsu's arm. Tetsu was tough, and his opponent acknowledged that with pride, proclaiming that the sun bows to no metal. As he spun, a wave of heat surged forth, forcing Tetsu to brace himself. The temperature made his steel skin glow faintly, yet his grin remained unshaken. Mick's voice surged with excitement, noting Midoriya's impressive display of heat. Tetsu was holding his ground, but the heat was undoubtedly taking its toll. Aizawa calmly analyzed the situation, explaining that Midoriya was pacing himself, using controlled bursts to wear Tetsu down. While Tetsu's steel quirk was durable, prolonged exposure to such heat could push his limits. He needed to close the distance and engage in a physical fight. With determination, Tetsu charged again, his steel body gleaming as he barreled through the heat wave, fists swinging in a relentless flurry. He declared that he was forged in fire, aiming a double-fisted strike that shook the ground. Izuku leaped back, the heat flaring around him to deflect the blow, the air crackling with intensity. Izuku's eyes glinted with fierce determination as he responded, challenging Tetsu to handle the sun. He stomped, forming a radiant orb above his palm, a miniature cruel sun pulsing with searing light. Instead of hurling it directly at Tetsu, he aimed for the ground between them, creating a barrier of blistering heat that forced Tetsu to skid to a halt, his steel skin glowing brighter as sweat beaded despite his metallic form. Tetsu's excitement was palpable as he dove through the heat, tackling Izuku in an attempt to pin him down. The impact sent a shockwave across the arena, dust rising as Izuku braced himself, his strength holding against Tetsu's weight while heat radiated to keep the steel teen at bay. Izuku pushed back, muscles flexing as he forced Tetsu to retreat. He acknowledged Tetsu's strength but asserted that it alone wouldn't be enough to eclipse him. He unleashed a focused heat beam, a narrow lance of energy that struck Tetsu's chest, pushing him back as his steel skin glowed red-hot, though his grin never faltered. The crowd gasped, the arena a cauldron of heat and steel. The silent stands of 1A, 1B, Mei, and Shinszo watched with rapt attention, their tension a testament to the battle's ferocity. Izuku's heat warped the air, while Tetsu's steel gleamed defiantly, each clash a spectacle of raw power. Mick's voice boomed with excitement, noting that Tetsu was not backing down. Aizawa's analysis revealed that while Tetsu enjoyed the challenge, he was burning energy quickly. Midoriya was controlling the tempo, forcing Tetsu to expend more energy to keep up. If Tetsu couldn't land a decisive hit, he would tire first. Tetsu lunged once more, aiming a steel fist at Izuku's shoulder. The strike created a thunderous clang as Izuku blocked with a heat-charged arm, sending sparks flying. Tetsu expressed his respect for Izuku, declaring he wasn't done yet. He spun, delivering a sweeping kick, his steel leg a blur, trying to knock Izuku off balance. Izuku slid back, using his heat to melt the concrete beneath Tetsu's feet, creating a sticky patch that slowed him down. He praised Tetsu's resolve but asserted that the lion's pride burned brighter. Charging forward, he struck Tetsu's chest with a fist glowing with heat, the impact pushing the steel teen back, his boots digging into the ground. Tetsu laughed, his steel skin glowing hotter, eyes alight with exhilaration. He countered with a barrage of punches, each one a metallic hammer, forcing Izuku to weave and dodge, heat trailing his movements like a comet's tail. The arena shook as the two titans clashed, neither yielding. Izuku's eyes blazed with determination as he acknowledged Tetsu as a worthy foe. Raising both hands, he formed a larger cruel sun, its radiant heat warping the air. He hurled the orb, aiming to envelop Tetsu in a wave of searing energy, pushing him toward the boundary. Tetsu braced himself, his steel body glowing molten red, charging through the heat with a defiant roar. He leaped, aiming a fist at Izuku's chest in a desperate bid to turn the tide. Izuku sidestepped, using his heat to deflect the blow, and countered with a sweeping kick, sending Tetsu skidding closer to the ring's edge. The crowd held its breath, the arena filled with tension. Tetsu's steel skin shimmered, his stamina waning but his grin unbroken. He charged one last time, his body a gleaming missile, aiming to tackle Izuku out of bounds in a final, all-or-nothing effort. Izuku's eyes gleamed with pride as he prepared for the final confrontation. He unleashed a final heat wave, a radiant surge that enveloped Tetsu, pushing him back as his steel boots slid across the concrete. With a final shove, Izuku guided him over the boundary, Tetsu landing with a thud. Midnight declared the match over, announcing that Tetsu had crossed the boundary and Izuku Midoriya advanced to the semifinals. The stadium erupted in cheers, the atmosphere electric as Izuku stood, heat fading from his form, his chest heaving but his expression radiant with pride. Tetsu, his steel skin returning to normal, grinned broadly, catching his breath and acknowledging the fight with genuine respect. Izuku nodded, recognizing Tetsu's valor and the brightness of his steel. They shared a firm handshake, a bond forged in the heat of battle. Mick's voice boomed with exhilaration, celebrating the clash as a quarter-final for the ages. Aizawa noted Midoriya's control of the fight, praising Tetsu's endurance while acknowledging Midoriya's superior power. The silent stands of 1A, 1B, Mei, and Shinszo absorbed the match's intensity, their eyes reflecting awe and respect. The crowd's roar filled the arena, setting the stage for the semifinals, each battle promising to push the festival's limits further. Izuku walked off, ready for the challenges ahead, his pride burning brighter than ever.